There we go. Sweet. So, here we go. A little bit different of a setup again today. As you can see, that part is actually being used on the intermission screen, and then on the other screen, it's a little bit more rearranged again. So, I've got myself today, and Cole, you want to say a little bit about how your day went?
It went good.
That's good. What'd you get up to today?
Work, game, and didn't have school, so
Yeah, that's what we like to hear. Well, so I'm here. How are you guys doing today? It's good to see all of you guys. Let me know how you guys' days have been going. Gosh, what did I do today? So my normal day, I guess. So I did chapel office this morning, ran the live stream. It was a really good chapel today, actually. So that was fun. Um, so yeah, I went to work this morning for the chapel office, did the live stream, and then I wrote two papers today. So I have a world religions class that I'm working on, which one of the so essentially the world religions class is you take 1 to 2 weeks every single uh gosh, what am I trying to say? Like every week or two, you discuss a different world religion. So like it started off the first 2 weeks we did indigenous traditional religions, so kind of like Native American religion and African folk religion. And then we did 2 weeks on Hinduism, we did 2 weeks on Buddhism, and next I think we're doing Jainism. I think, which I think is another because Buddhism is a shoot off of Hinduism, and I think Jainism is another shoot off of Hinduism, if I remember right. Um, but two of the assignments for the class are papers based on experiences with other religions, right? So for one of the papers, I have to visit the worship site of another religion, and for another paper, I have to do an interview with a person of another religion. So me and a couple friends, we banged both of those out in one weekend. Last weekend, we went to a Hindu temple, and we interviewed the presiding priestly family. So I have all that information still fresh on my mind. So today was my easy day because normally I have a bunch of classes and work and everything. So today was fairly easy. So I ended up spending the bulk of my day writing both of those papers. That was fun. I think I got like 5 pages on the one paper and 5 pages on the other, or something like that, which isn't terrible. Um, Gosh, and then I went to the gym, leg day, ate my dinner. Actually, just shoveled it down my throat like 10 minutes ago because I was going to be late. And now I'm here. So, but yeah, how was all you guys' day? Nate, it's good to see you, man. Good to see you come by. Cole, I see you here as well. How are you
you
guys
know
all
I'm
doing
here,
today?
Logan.
I know you're here. I just saw you in the chat too, though.
I love that emote.
Yeah, man, that was your suggestion. You know,
Yes, and I now I'm just gonna I use that emote anymore.
anytime that
I'm
somebody
gonna
comes in the
watch.
chat, it's a good one to use whenever people come and chat.
Yeah,
And it's a good raid emote too because we needed everyone was saying in the Discord that we needed an emote for whenever people come and raid. And I was like, you know what? That's a good idea. That works with Cole's
hi
idea.
Thomas.
And it worked out. It worked out that we got a raid emote now. Heyo Mates and Saints, and then we got two other ones, all because of the, work that you guys put into donating to our outreach project. So all that money's going towards a fantastic cause, and I'm glad that you guys get a little bit of something in return. That's the least I can do for all you guys' help that you guys give. Thomas, hello. Good to see you, man. As Cole shouted out, Nate just got back from a worship committee meeting. They're actually making me do stuff. So, what kind of stuff are they making you do? Out of curiosity. Now I gotta know. What kind of stuff they forcing upon you. But yeah, we'll wait a little bit longer for people to come in here. We're finishing up the book of Genesis today. I don't know if you guys saw, but this has been almost 10 whole months of us doing this book. Um, Gosh, I don't even know if I remember the exact first day. Actually, I can probably figure it out. Because it was the first week of this year was the first time we streamed, and we kept the same Wednesday night Bible study ever since the beginning. So it would have been January 4th. January 4th would have been the first time that we would have done a Genesis Bible study. And almost every week since then, I mean, there was one week where I went on vacation. I wasn't able to stream that week. And I think there was maybe one other week that I missed. Almost without fault, every week since then, we have done one or more chapters of the book of Genesis. And gosh, I don't even know how many weeks later, we're finally going to finish it up. So today's our last day in the book of Genesis. We might spend a little bit more time at the back end kind of recapping the book as a whole and kind of, the overarching story as we go into our, next book. So next week we're going to be starting the book of Exodus, and that's going to be fun. That means I got to start a brand new folder on the YouTube. So which actually, speaking of, I need to write a note for myself before I forget. So if you guys don't know, these Bible studies, I take the recordings of them and I post them to a folder on YouTube, a playlist. And actually, I can check right now how many weeks we've done this. So there are currently 36 videos in the Genesis Bible study folder, meaning this is the 37th week we have done Bible study. And as of tonight, I'll post the last recording into that folder, and it'll be complete. I'll have to start a new color scheme for the thumbnail. I actually already know what the color scheme is going to be for Exodus. If you guys were here a little while ago, we were having a debate on the channel as to how to color code the entire Bible. Because if we're going to keep doing this long term, I've got to come up with a color scheme for each of the books so that every book has a different color scheme. And I think I've got my system. So I won't spoil all of them, but the Pentateuch books, so if you guys don't know what the Pentateuch is the first 5 books of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. I want to make those 5 books. The first color is yellow. And then the second color is based on the book, right? So the first color is going to be based on where the book comes from, right? So it's going to be split up like Pentateuch, Law, Prophets, Gospel, and then Letters, right? And then each of the books in those categories will have its own color in the other corner. So this one was yellow and green. Exodus will be yellow because it's Pentateuch, and then purple because it has to deal with royalty and Egypt and law, right? And the same way that Genesis was green because it had to deal with the land of Israel and the beginning of all life and creation, and a lot of kind of growth theme narratives. So that's where we went there. Why the thumbnails matter if you unlist the vids anyways? Well, I mean, the hope is that the videos are still, people don't have to view them by any means. I kind of wanted to, and Nate, actually, you might know more about this than I do, but my plan was I wanted to separate the long live stream content from the curated YouTube content, because the videos that I post on YouTube, there's 2 different categories. There's the live stream uploads, which aren't really heavily edited, very kind of laid back, long form content. And then there's the videos that are made specifically for YouTube, the short 10, 15, 20-minute videos that are highly edited, spend a lot more time in. And I guess I was kind of wanting to separate the content, separate it so that it's easier for people to know what's the content made specifically for YouTube, what's the content not made specifically for YouTube. And the stuff that I made specifically for YouTube, it was kind of getting drowned out by 50 Genesis videos, like you'll have 30 Genesis videos and then one video made for YouTube, and then another 20, 30 Genesis videos, and then, you know what I mean? So, I don't know, maybe, I could theoretically unlist them. Nate, do you think it would be better if they were unlisted and they were just all present? Or do you think it'd be better that they just stay unlisted and, the stuff that's made for YouTube stays front and center? I've gone back and forth on that, as you guys probably know. But I don't know. Just a thought. Exodus is a great book, but for me, it's hard to understand and grasp some of the stuff, such as the tabernacle that it explains. Yeah, no. So if you guys don't know, typically people think that Leviticus is kind of the book of the Pentateuch that deals with the law, but the law actually seeps into Exodus and through a lot of Numbers too. So like you kind of have this narrative piece from like Genesis 1 through like Exodus 20-ish, and then like the rest of Exodus, all of Leviticus and Numbers is all like facts and law and all of this other stuff that people tend to think is only in Leviticus. And then you get some narrative portions near the end of Numbers, and then you get to Deuteronomy, which is like all kind of the narrative and the retelling of the law, but this time in like prophetic nature almost, before the people go into the land. So it's a lot easier to read it that time around than it is in the time of Leviticus. And it'll be a while before we get to that part. We're going to be stuck in the narrative part of Exodus for quite a while. 20 chapters will take a bit. But we'll get to that law portion eventually, and we're going to talk about it, and that's going to be super fun. I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, Nate, you have a thought on the thumbnails and stuff? Or not on the thumbnails, on unlisting the videos and whatnot? But yeah, it's good to see all you guys. I'm glad you guys decided to stop by, and we're finishing up the book of Genesis today. I'm very excited, and yeah, we're going to be getting into that in just a minute here. That's up to you and how much content you want on your channel, and if you think these streams are worth being seen afterwards, I'm assuming is what that is. So they did actually get some views, like not nearly as much, like 14, 7, 5, 13, 8, 10, you know, like they did get some views. Obviously not nearly as much as like the stuff made specifically for YouTube, but I mean, it's also possible that, I mean, I don't know. Do you think it would be worth making a second YouTube channel specifically as a live stream archive? I mean, I've thought about that too, but I don't know. I mean, I know that would be a ton of work to do, and then I don't know. I mean, I don't have the original copies of the live streams, so I would be re-downloading the YouTube videos and re-uploading them, so then they'd be less quality as well. Because I don't have enough hard drive space to save all of the videos physically. But I mean, I've thought about having like a second YouTube channel specifically for the VODs, but I don't think so personally. I like having all things in one channel. That's my thought. My thought too is exactly the same. I like the idea of having a one channel for all the stuff to be on. My other thought is promoting the playlist on Discord. So my plan is to hopefully actually do that today after the Bible study is uploaded tonight. Actually go on to the Discord and I don't know, either make a new channel or an old channel, promote in there, hey, the Genesis Bible study is finished. If you want to go back and rewatch, here's the archive of every single one of the Bible study streams, stuff like that. I don't know, I think that could maybe be worth it. You know, and then people go on the Discord and they see, you know, that's how you get to it. Because I figure people come to the YouTube channel and they're not going to want to see it full of a bunch of VODs. But if there's a different way to promote it, that could work. But yeah, okay, so we're coming up here on 8:15. So we'll get into the Bible study here now that a bunch of people have rolled in. And yeah, so feel free to keep talking about this kind of stuff. And I will just pray us in real quick. And then we're going to do the same thing that we always do. So if you guys are new here, kind of how we do things is we, after people pour in, we pray in as before we get started. We're going to read through the scripture at face value. Just read the whole way through before we make any kind of comments or any kind of stuff. Just let God speak to us on his own terms, through his word without any kind of thoughts of our own. And then after we've read through it and had time to think about it and process it, we're going to go through it one more time. This time we're actually going to talk about what we thought of, what we saw, and just kind of talk about what, like, all the questions, comments, and concerns and stuff like that. So that's what we're going to do today. I think you can still put the stream playlist on the front page of your channel, even if the videos are unlisted. Yeah, and I think that's what I have. Yeah, so if you go to the YouTube page, gosh, I don't know if there's a way for me to show you very easily, but you can see like the front page on the home, there's videos, there's popular videos, and then there's created playlists. And then the created playlists are, Genesis, God's Gamers, Ecclesiastes, Amateur Academic Bible Study, and then various sermons and video projects. So like they are on the front page of the channel. Like the videos themselves aren't in the videos section, but on the home page of the channel is the created playlist. If that makes sense. But yeah, so I'm going to pray us in real quick, and we're going to get to it. So, Father in heaven, I thank you so much for today. I thank you so much for gathering all of us here today to be able to gather and to talk about your word and learn a little bit more about you. I thank you so much for everyone here who is interested in diving in with me. We can do so as a community of believers. I pray that you would be here amidst our conversation, inspiring our words so that we might speak what is glorifying unto you and honoring to your name, that all the words that we say would be part of furthering your kingdom on this earth, and that each and every single one of us would learn something new about this conversation and be able to apply something new to our lives moving forward, and that we would always put you first in everything that we do. We thank you so much for your presence in our lives, and we pray that you would meet us again here. Pray all these things in your name. Amen. So, let me get us swapped over here to our Bible page. So here we go. If you guys have seen here, there's a little bit of a new layout. It was kind of similar last week. I've been playing around with getting a better looking layout. So as you can see, the left side of the screen, we've got the text in full. You've got me still on the right side. The charity counter is at the very top. Right beneath me is going to be where the chat shows up. Whenever people chat, you'll be able to see it down there. And then between me and the charity count is going to be where the alerts are now. So I can play a test one real quick so you guys can see what's going on. This is not somebody following the channel. This is a test follow, so you guys know, just so you guys can see it. So that's where the new alert is, right there, right above me. Let me know what you think of the new layout. I've been spending a little bit of time, like I said, playing around with it, trying to make it look a little bit nicer than it was before. So I'm still playing with it a little bit. There might be a couple other things that I change, but overall, kind of just let me know what you're thinking about the layout. If you think it looks good, if there's anything that you'd like to see changed, all that good stuff. I like to get feedback from you guys and to constantly be making things better. So yeah. Let me know what you guys think. Nate gives a thumbs up. And as you can see, the charity goal, we hit 100 on the charity goal previously. I set a new goal to 200, and we'll see if we can reach 200 for the charity. I don't have any kind of reward set up as of right now. I haven't thought of anything just yet. But
Logan, 200 at 200 face reveal.
Yeah, 200 face reveal. Honestly, maybe I can do that. Maybe I can put under as the reward 200 face reveal. But I don't know. I've been contemplating that back and forth. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to leave the charity goal up or not because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do as reward. Honestly, I never really thought past getting to the 100 mark. I thought the 100 mark would be a pretty high bar, and we crushed it pretty early. So we got still 2 more months before me and my friends go out to give out the goods. So if we can raise a little bit more before then, that'd be awesome. Just not sure of a reward just yet. But yeah, so I figured I'd leave the charity goal up and raise it a little bit, see what happens, just to let people know that it's still going on. Honestly, that was the big part of why I did decide to re-enable it, is because I figured probably a lot of new people to the channel don't know that we are trying to raise money for charity. And if we put that up there, that gives them a way of seeing, oh yeah, they have a charity goal going on. Maybe they can ask about it, stuff like that. So you could try tilting your camera vertical for this scene. That would be interesting. I haven't thought about that, honestly. I mean, I'd have to do a little bit of rearranging. I'd have to find a new spot for the chat box to go and all of that stuff. But if I was able to figure out something new, that could work. That like maybe after the charity goal is over, move everything up and then turn the camera vertical, something like that. That could maybe work. But yeah. But yeah, so as you guys can see, I have Logos pulled up on my screen. Logos is a Bible study tool often made for like professors and pastors and stuff like that. So there's a lot of extra resources. For instance, I can pull up here a commentary that is Matthew Henry's commentary, one that I use quite a bit. So that's right here. And actually, let me scroll down to where we're going to be reading today. We also have over here another version of the Bible here. This is a different version. This is the ESV, I believe. Yeah, the ESV. And then over here we got a text comparison, so we can view the ESV, NASB, NIV, NRSV, and the KJV all side by side and see what they have to say. And then finally, I believe this is it. This is the Atlas. So if there's ever a place that we want to look for, we can pull this up and we can look for where a specific place would have been. So right now it has the Exodus from Egypt because we're going to be going into Egypt here in a little bit. But yeah, so it's a really nice study tool that we're going to be using. And if you guys want to, you can read along with me on the screen. I have pulled up the NRSV, the New Revised Standard Version. And we're going to be starting here in chapter 49, verse 28, actually. And then we will be reading through all of chapter 50. So if you want to read along with me on the screen, you're welcome to do that. Or if you have your own English version that you want to pull up, or a Bible that's in your own native language, you can pull that up with me and read along in your own physical copy. But like I said, if you do not have your own physical copy that you want to read along with, feel free to read along with me here on the screen. We're just going to read through the whole passage right off the bat. From the beginning to end, and then after that, we will get to discussing it. So, yeah, like I said, we're going to be here, chapter 49, verse 29, and then we're going to be going the whole way through chapter 50. So if you want to read along with me, there we go. So starting here in verse 29, then he charged them, saying to them, I am about to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my ancestors, in the cave in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave in the field at Machpelah, near Mamre, in the land of Canaan, in the field that Abraham bought from Ephron the Hittite as a burial site. There Abraham and his wife Sarah were buried. There Isaac and his wife Rebekah were buried, and there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is in it were purchased from the Hittites. When Jacob ended his charge to his sons, he drew up his feet into the bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. Then Joseph threw himself on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. Joseph commanded the physicians in his service to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. They spent 40 days in doing this. For that it is the time required for embalming, and the Egyptians wept for him 70 days. When the days of weeping for him were past, Joseph addressed the household of Pharaoh. If now I have found favor with you, please speak to Pharaoh as follows. My father had made me swear an oath. He said, I am about to die. In the tomb that I hewed out for myself in the land of Canaan, there you shall bury me. Now therefore, let me go up so that I may bury my father. Then I will return. Pharaoh answered, Go up and bury your father, as he made you swear to do. So Joseph went up to bury his father. With him went all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of the household, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, as well as the household of Joseph, his brothers and his father's household. Only their children, their flocks, and their herds were left in the land of Goshen. Both chariots and charioteers went up with him. It was a very great company. When they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, they held there a very great and sorrowful lamentation. And he observed a time of mourning for his father 7 days. When the Canaanite inhabitants of the land saw the mourning on the threshing floor of Atad, they said, This is a grievous mourning on the part of the Egyptians. Therefore the place was named Abel Mizraim. It is beyond the Jordan. Thus his sons did for him as he had instructed them. They carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field at Machpelah, the field near Mamre, which Abraham bought as a burial site from Ephron the Hittite. After he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt with his brothers and all who had gone with him to bury his father. Realizing that their father was dead, Joseph's brothers said, "What if Joseph still bears a grudge against us and pays us back in full for all the wrong that we did him?" So they approached Joseph, saying, "Your father gave this instruction before he died. Say to Joseph, 'I beg you, forgive the crime of your brothers and the wrong they did in harming you. Now therefore, please forgive the crime of the servants of the God of your father.'" Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Then his brothers also wept, fell down before him, and said, "We are here as your slaves." But Joseph said to them, "Do not be afraid. Am I in the place of God? Even though you intended to do harm to me, God intended it for good, in order to preserve a numerous people, as he is doing today. So have no fear. I myself will provide for you and your little ones." In this way he reassured them, speaking kindly to them. So Joseph remained in Egypt, he and his father's household, and Joseph lived 110 years. Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation. The children of Machir, son of Manasseh, were also born on Joseph's knees. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am about to die, but God will surely come to you, and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob." So Joseph made the Israelites swear, saying, "When God comes to you, you shall carry up my bones from here." And Joseph died, being 110 years old. He was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt. And as you can see right here, this is Exodus. So we're done. That's it. And then we will get into this next week, but I'm not going to spoil it.
We're through one book. Yay!
We're almost through one book. We got to chat about it for a little bit still. I mean, we could end it right now and say we're done with Genesis, but
No, I meant we're done reading it. I know we still got to chat.
I guess that's fair. We are done reading it at least, but yo, Altus, how's it going, man? It's good to see you. You have a good day, man? Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you being here.
Hi, Altus.
So, chat, you guys have any questions, comments, concerns? This is our time to chat about what we've just read. So, as I said before, we're going to be reading back through the passage. We're going to be doing so small portion at a time, sentence at a time, paragraph at a time, and we're just going to kind of be discussing what we have heard, what we've learned, how this relates to what we've heard before, and then also be going over some of the commentaries that we have. And if you guys ever have any kind of questions, comments, concerns, feel free to bring them up. This isn't a time for me to be talking to you guys, talking down to you guys as a pastor. This is a time for us to be in Bible study together, right? So that's why we call this a Bible study. We don't call this a sermon. You know, this is a time for all of us to be together in this Bible study, talking and discussing and learning from one another. And of course, I've spent a little bit of time researching it, so I have a lot that I can say, but I would rather have this be a discussion between all of us than me just talking to myself. So if you guys want to join me in that discussion, feel free. I always say that there's no such thing as a stupid question unless if I ask it. So we're here for discussion. We're here to talk. We're here to learn together. So if you ever want to ask a question about kind of where we're at in the story, or if you want recap on a particular thing, feel free to ask about that. If you want to know about a specific area or about a specific person, we can tell you more about them. Or if you want to know more about the story at hand, we can talk more about that as well. Cool beans. Dude, thank you, man. Thanks for stopping by again today. Hopefully it's been a good day for you. Is there prayer requests afterwards? Absolutely, man. So we always end stream by going through the prayer requests on our channel. So we have a Discord community where we all gather, and in that Discord community, we have a text channel for prayer requests, and people quite often put prayer requests into that channel. So we always end our Bible studies here by going over all the prayer requests on our channel so that everybody can be knowing what to be praying for. If you have a prayer request, you can feel free to add it to that Discord chat, or if you want to put it in chat right now, we can know to be praying for it as well, man. Absolutely. And we get off topic all the time, so don't worry about it. I'll also let you know if it's a stupid question. Well, like I said, nobody can ask stupid questions unless if I ask them. So, you know, it's only me that's possible to ask stupid questions. Awesome. Yeah, dude, absolutely, man. Absolutely, man. 100%. Finds peace under approximately 6 feet of soil. God, is Hamas? I'm assuming based on that comment that Hamas is probably one of the people involved in what's going on in Israel right now. I don't watch the news anymore, so I don't really know what's going on other than what I've heard other people say here at the seminary and what people have said in Discord. Um, I don't know. I deleted, as you guys probably know already, I deleted all my social media and I don't watch the news anymore. I found it all depressing and pretty bad for our mental health. So I wanted to take a step in just getting rid of all of it. So sometimes that's a bad thing. Sometimes I miss out on important stuff, but I think overall it's been pretty good for my mental health just to get rid of all of it. I'm assuming that's what that is at least.
I don't know if he's talking about a person or, but when I hear hummus, I thought of the Scottish food,
Oh, okay. I got you, Cole.
but I could be wrong.
So Altus is saying it's not a person, it's a group. So it's the group that launched the rockets at Jerusalem. Okay, yeah, Nate just clarified as well. Hamas are the group of the terrorists. Okay, I gotcha.
Okay, I'm sorry, I am not learned in this way.
You're good. I mean, I'm the same way. Like I said, I haven't been keeping up with the news anymore. So I found out about it actually Sunday morning at church whenever people asked for it to be prayed for. And I was like, oh, at first on Sunday, I thought it was a general prayer for Israel. I didn't think it was for anything specific. I was just like, oh, a general prayer for Israel. That's a good thing. Um, and then I found out later that day, whenever I called my mom, that it was going because my mom asked me if I was still going to Israel this summer or not. Because if you guys don't know, for the Master of Divinity program that I'm doing right now, part of the program is an optional trip to Israel where you spend a month learning at the University of Jerusalem. Um, so I planned on doing it last summer, and the trip got canceled for school reasons here at the seminary. The seminary couldn't afford to do it. Well, not that they couldn't afford to do it, but there weren't enough students that signed up. Like if they had, they definitely had the money to do it, but they didn't find it was worth it to do it because there were so little students that signed up for it that summer. So I was going to do it this summer. I actually signed up for it a couple months ago to do it this upcoming summer. And then my mom, of course, told me on the phone, hey, it's probably canceled, right? And I was like, why would the trip to Israel be canceled? And she was like, well, because of what's going on over there. And I was like, oh, I don't know anything was going on over there. So she let me know all about that. um, Jacob's death and burial. I haven't read all of Genesis, so I didn't know this was in here. Yeah. So actually, I guess before we get started, I could do a little bit of a recap of Genesis. I'll do a more broad recap here at the end of the stream, but I can do a little bit of a short one here. Wouldn't go to Israel this summer. I mean, you think things would be wrapped up by this summer? Or do you think it's going to
No.
still be going on for a while?
If it's anything like the thing in Ukraine, it's gonna go on for years.
You think so? See, like I said,
Logan,
I don't know enough about it. I mean, I don't know if it's like a small thing. I don't know if it's a big thing. I don't know. Like,
yeah, I don't know. It's either gonna be like the 6 Day War, or it's gonna be a decade long, probably. One
I
of the
gotcha.
two.
I was gonna make a political comment, but I'm not going to. um,
It's only my guess of what I know the region's like, so.
well, a U.S. political comment, I guess. But,
Okay,
um,
that's iffy, Logan. There.
well, uh, I'll shut up.
Eh,
I'll shut up.
yes,
I'm gonna get myself in a world of hurt if I start bringing up U.S. politics. So I won't do
yes,
that.
you will. Let
Even though
me
I
do
really want
that.
to. Even though I really, really want to, I'm not going to.
Let me do the stupid things, okay, Logan?
That's fair. That's fair. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, so I'm not sure what's going on. There was a thought in my mind that I wasn't going to go this summer anyways, because the thought was potentially not this upcoming summer, but the summer after that, like 2 years from now. Um, I would go with some other people, but we'll see. We'll see. I actually know
It, w-
there's actually a person I know from undergrad who's over there in Jordan right now. She says she's pretty safe in the location she's at in Jordan, but um, it's interesting. I know she's over there right now. But yeah, so a little bit of recap. I won't recap the entire book just yet, but I'll do a short little recap for everyone who wants to know kind of what we've been going over in Genesis so far. So Genesis is kind of split up into two large sections, right? So you have Genesis chapters 1 to 11, which is kind of its own portion of material. And then you have Genesis 12 to 50, which is a second larger piece of material, right? So Genesis 1 to 11 take place in a different time period, right? They take place, I want to say like it's like early Bronze Age and then the Neolithic, or is it Neolithic or Chalcolithic? I don't remember. It's an older time period, right? Genesis 1 to 11 is much, much, much older than Genesis 11 to 50. And they're written in a different. Gosh, my nose is so itchy. I'm sorry. So Genesis 1 to 11 takes place in an older time period. It takes place with more individual, unique stories with characters, right? So you've got Genesis 1 to 3 with the creation account, and then you've got Cain and Abel, then you've got the flood, and you've got Babel, kind of all these like really extravagant, miraculous stories of God's intervention, right? Giant flood that covers the earth, and a giant tower to heaven, and people's languages get dispersed, and the entire creation of the entire universe, and just all this crazy stuff, all these super miraculous things in a much older time period, right? And then you have a long time period that kind of passes, and then you get to Genesis chapter 11 to 50. So Genesis chapter 11 to 50 take place. Let me pull up my notes here so I make sure I'm not lying to you guys. They take place, I know, in the late Bronze Age, right? So the late Bronze Age, if you guys know your history fairly well, you'll know that kind of there's different eras of human history. So you have kind of the Bronze Age, which is like very early human civilization. You've got the Iron Age, you've got the Persian period, and then you've got like medieval, you've got Greco-Roman, and all that stuff, right? So the Bronze Age is split up into three different categories. You've got the early Bronze Age, the middle Bronze Age, and the late Bronze Age, right? And so essentially where we're at in Genesis here is taking place in the middle Bronze Age, right? So the middle Bronze Age being Genesis chapter 12 to 50, sorry. And this is about 2000 to 1550 AD, right? So that's what I'm saying. Genesis 1 to 11 is way earlier than that, right? Genesis 12 to 50 takes place in the Middle Bronze Age, which is about 2000 to 1550 AD. And Genesis chapter 11 to 50 takes essentially accounts the story of the patriarchs of the Israelite religion, right? So that being Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So you have Abraham being the original patriarch of the religion, in which is the one that is called by God to leave his home to go to the land that God will promise to his people, that being the land of Israel. It is not currently known as the land of Israel in the book of Genesis. It's known as the land of Canaan, right? It's not going to be referred to as Israel until a much later time period. But at that being said, they would go to the land of Canaan, Abraham and his wife and their nephew Lot. We follow then Abraham's story to his fullest extent, and we follow until he ends up giving birth to two sons, Ishmael and Isaac. And we get their story for a little while. Then, after Abraham dies, we follow Isaac's story. And Isaac's narrative is really short in the book of Genesis. It's only a couple chapters long. And then we find out that Isaac has twins. So Isaac has twins. He has Jacob and Esau. Esau being the firstborn, Jacob being the secondborn, although they're twins, so basically born at the same time, although Esau is still technically the firstborn. There's a whole story with Jacob that takes place through the majority of this book. He has all these ups and downs throughout his story, um, and then eventually he gives birth to 12 sons. Right, so God actually changes Jacob's name to Israel. God changes people's names every once in a while, in the same way that he changed Saul's name to Paul in the New Testament, the same way that he changed Abram's name into Abraham, right? So whenever God originally called Abraham, his name was Abram. God changed his name to Abraham. In the same way, God changed Jacob's name to Israel. And then Israel gives birth to 12 sons, these being the future 12 tribes of Israel, right? So whenever we get to the time of Israel, Israel the nation, not Israel the person, Israel the nation. Once we get to the time of Israel the nation, a couple books from now, they will be organized into 12 tribes, and these 12 tribes will be named after the 12 sons of Israel. There's a little bit more nuance to that, but that's essentially the main points. And as you can see, we will be coming up here on the end of Jacob's life, and the end of Joseph's life. So Joseph is the 11th son of Jacob out of 12. And Joseph is essentially the main character of these last chapters of Genesis, right? So Joseph is sold into slavery by his brothers, and he serves time in Egypt as a slave and as a prisoner, and then eventually works his way up to be the second in command of all of Egypt through a lot of prophecy and interpretation of dreams, and as he saves the land from a massive famine. And we recount all of that in our previous chapters. So, of course, now Jacob and his whole family are living in Egypt with Joseph. And this is essentially the end of Jacob's life and the end of Joseph's life here in the land of Egypt. And, of course, if you guys have any other questions about it, we can go over any of that kind of stuff. If you have any other, I know that I kind of breezed over a lot of that. So if you have any kind of other questions about everything that's going on, feel free to ask them. So Chi, it's good to see you, Chi. How's it going tonight? Good to see you stop by. How's it going today? Altus, interestingly, it also calls Israel God's firstborn, yet Abraham is never called his firstborn. Yeah, and in a lot of ways, it seems to me that that's essentially just saying, since Jacob was the one who was named Israel, in a way that makes him the firstborn of, God's firstborn, right? Because God's firstborn child being the nation of Israel. I mean, I guess it is a little bit weird because Abraham is the first one that God called, but since Jacob essentially then becomes the first child of all the nation of Israel in a way, because Jacob having his name changed to Israel marks him as the first person of the nation of Israel in a way. Wasn't Jacob buried in the cave of patriarchs or tomb maybe? Yeah, so actually that's what we're going to be going over here in our chapter today. So in our chapter today, we get to hear about how Jacob was buried with his ancestors. So we're going to be going over that here just in a second. As a firstborn, you get a double portion too. Yeah, and Israel certainly gets a double portion, that's for sure. Well, until they, disobey God and go on their own path, then things get pretty bad, but... 2 helpings of oatmeal for breakfast. Would they have had oatmeal? I don't know. Would they have had oatmeal back in the day? Were oats a plant back in Israel back in the day? Or is that not something that would have been over there?
I don't actually know. They would have definitely been able to grow oats, but I don't think oats originated in that area of the world.
Gosh, how is it that we have gone off on a tangent about this like 18 times? We keep going off about plants in different regions of the world and fruits and stuff. We keep doing that. We need to stop doing that. So I don't know. Quail and manna was the 5-star. They didn't make bread. Well, I mean, they definitely had bread. That's for sure. They definitely would have had bread. Because the Hebrew, they have a Hebrew word for bread, right? Lechem, I think. It's either lechem or lehem something. I forget how to say it. The recipe for bread was given to Adam by an angel according to Oh, really? Lechem? Okay, so I was right the first time. Lechem. But yeah, so they had a word for bread. It was actually pretty common in the Bible or in the Old Testament. So they definitely were able to make
Well,
bread. And that's
Logan,
flour could have been grinded oats, wheat. Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know. We got to stop going off on these tangents. We got to get started. But I
Logan.
like the discussion normally. What's up?
So I just looked it up. According to the ScienceDirect.com, oats can be traced back to 2000 BC in the Middle East or
Okay,
surrounding Mediterranean area. So
I
they
mean,
would have had oats.
yeah, that would have been during this time, 2000. I mean, this would have been closer to like 1500 AD. Well, maybe. I'm not sure.
Well,
Somewhere between, but
I'm yeah, 1500. Yeah, because I think from what I've heard, Exodus is either said to be around 1500 or 1200.
yeah. So there's two different theories
Yeah.
for the Exodus. The one that I let me pull up the. Gosh, we got to do this really quick so that we can get going. Because
The
we are
1200 is based off of the 1200, if I remember correctly, is based off of archaeological findings, and the 1500 is based on, I think, genealogy from the Bible.
something like that. Yeah. It's really complicated because essentially there's pieces of evidence that say it could have taken place during both times. But
Yeah, but
as you
the
guys
big
know, what's up?
the big evidence is, from what I've heard, from what the guy I listened to this on, is uh is the Israelites built Ramses and stuff. So
Yeah.
and
Exactly. And like I was actually just gonna say that. So, as you guys probably know, one of the classes I'm taking in seminary right now actually is exegesis of the Book of Judges. So one of the books that I'm really studying this semester is Judges, and we were going over the timeline of the Book of Judges recently, right? And long story short, the Book of Judges kind of takes place right at the transition from the late Bronze Age to the Iron Age 1, meaning that it was like a massive time of societal collapse, right? So the late Bronze Age into the Iron Age 1 was just like chaos, dark age. There was like plagues and earthquakes and solar eclipses and war, and like all the current nations just completely crippled. And then there were outside peoples coming from the north that were coming in and invading, and everything was essentially just collapsing, right? And so the thing is that it takes place. Judges takes place around 1200 to 1000, right? And if we date it, right, the Book of Judges essentially is one of the points in saying that probably the later date for the Exodus is true, because if you follow the timeline of Judges, it seems to line up with the fact that the Israelites would have left Egypt during the reign of Ramses II, right? So we know from Egyptian records that Ramses II lived from 1279 to 1213 BC. And if we that actually lines up really well with the record in the Book of Judges, right? It lines up with about probably 100 years before Judges, the Israelites would have been leaving Egypt under the reign of Ramses II, which was a really good god or a really good pharaoh for God to go up against, because Ramses II is infamously the greatest of all the pharaohs in Egypt, right? And so for God to be going up against him was kind of like a statement in of itself, right? He's going up against the greatest of the Egyptian pharaohs. Um, but yeah, so that's to say about 1200. But yeah, we can stop going over that. So I know, right? If you guys want me to shut up, you gotta let me know. We can go on tangents all day, but yeah. So let's get to our chapter finally. So starting here in verse 29, this is the paragraph where Jacob gives his final requests before his death, right? So we'll start reading. Then he charged them, saying to them, I'm about to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my ancestors. So right, whenever he says, I'm about to be buried, or I'm about to be gathered to my people, right, that means he's about to die and go see his ancestors, right? That's what that phrase means, is I'm going to die and see my family, right? And he's saying, hey, when I die, bury me with my ancestors, right? And he says, in the cave in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave in the field at Machpelah, near Mamre, in the land of Canaan, right? So this is a long description of where the cave is. And then further description, in the field that Abraham bought from Ephron the Hittite as a burial site, right? So this is kind of the description of where the cave is. And then he explains, this is where Abraham and Sarah were buried. This is where Isaac and his wife Rebekah were buried. And that is also where I buried Leah, right? So Leah was Jacob's first wife, right? So Jacob is saying, hey, you know, my grandfather and my grandmother and my mother and my father and my wife Leah are all buried there in this cave because Abraham bought it as our family's burial site. Whenever I die, don't bury me in Egypt where we're currently living, because remember, they're all living in Egypt currently because it's a famine. Well, actually, I think the famine's over now, but they're still living in Egypt in the land of Goshen. So Goshen is a specific region of Egypt that they're living in. And Jacob is saying, listen, don't bury me here in Egypt. Bury me in the cave that my grandfather Abraham bought for all of us to be buried in. And then he further explains, the field and the cave that in it were purchased from the Hittites. And we know all of this from earlier in the book of Genesis, right? In Genesis, we get the story where Abraham bought this land off of Ephron. We get the story where Ishmael and Isaac bury Abraham there. We get the story where Jacob buries Isaac there. We get all these stories, right? We know all of this because we've already read it here in the book of Genesis, right? And then, after this charge, right, when Jacob ended his charge to his sons, he drew up his feet into the bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people, right? So this is essentially Jacob's last charge to his sons. And after he gives this charge, he gets into his bed, he breathes his last breath, and he's gathered to his people. In other words, he goes to see his family, right? So then after Jacob's death, Joseph throws himself on his father's face and weeps over him, right? So what is that? That's just Jacob's on the bed, and Joseph is essentially hugging his body around his father and crying, right? So Joseph commanded the physicians in his service to embalm his father, right? So this is an interesting claim. Why can I not highlight this? It doesn't want me to highlight it. I don't know why. There we go. So Joseph is asking the Egyptian physicians to embalm Jacob, his father. If you guys don't know what embalming is the process that the Egyptians did to the pharaohs, right? So normally, right, like let's say me right now, I died, right? My body's going to decompose and my body won't even be recognizable like 100 years from now, right? Like the mummification, it's exactly mummification. 1-to-1 embalming is the process of mummification. It's the exact same term. 100%, it's the exact same term, right? So, Egyptian mummies, that they went through the process of being embalmed, right? It's the exact same thing. So Egyptian mummies, right? So that's the thing. If I died right now, I wouldn't be recognizable in like 100 years from now because I would be completely decomposed.
I gave you 5 weeks, Logan, and you'll be gone.
Well, I mean, like everything, like bones, everything, But the Egyptians, they figured out a process called embalming, right? And essentially what they did is they kind of I don't know the exact process, but I kind of know parts of it. Cole, you might know more. But essentially, from what I understand, they just cut you open. They take out all of the stuff that decomposes super fast, like all your guts and all the gross stuff. And then they kind of just leave the skin and the bones and all that stuff, and then they kind of fill you with other stuff that won't decompose super fast. And And doing this process makes sure that your body can stay intact for thousands of years, right? So I was just talking about Ramses II, right? I was just talking about Ramses II who died in 1200 BC, right? So we're talking 3,200 years ago. We still have his body. Like Ramses II, the guy who persecuted the Israelites, we have his body. It's in a museum in Europe. Like it has been preserved that well through the process of being embalmed that we still have his body.
Okay,
And like,
Logan,
what's up?
do you want to hear a gross fact about mummies in England?
Absolutely.
Back in the Victorian era, British aristocrats in the Victorian era literally ate Egyptian mummies.
Wait, what was that?
They ate mummies.
Oh yeah, I knew that. If you guys didn't know that, they ate mummies. um
So I'm
So-
kind of surprised we still have Ramses II.
well, Ramses II was a big deal. When we found Ramses II's body, that was like, oh man, that's a big find. Like we needed his body. Because like I said, he was the greatest pharaoh in all of Egypt, infamously. So whenever they found his body, it was like, oh shoot, that's like a big deal. But yeah, his body is still intact 3,200 years later. And I'm going to tell you guys a story here in a second. But yeah, his body's still intact. Wait, I always get confused with this. Is the world closer to 7,000 or 5,000 years? Oh gosh. So that's a conversation for a completely different time. So if you get into Christian theology and history, there are a lot of different theories as to how old the world is. I know Christian scientists who say it's 7,000 years old. I know some that say it's 10,000 years old. I know some Christian scientists who believe in the Big Bang. I know,
And evolution and all that sort of stuff.
well, I also know some Christian scientists who believe in the Big Bang, but not in evolution. I know some Christian scientists who, say God created the world over millions of years. Like in the sense that, it's not 7 literal days to God. It's an infinite number of time for God. Like I've met Christians all over the spectrum on that. And I'm not a scientist, so I don't really know, honestly. How I've kind of landed on it is, to me, it doesn't really matter so much. And I only say that because whenever I read the creation account of the Bible, I'm not concerned with the fact whether the creation was made in 7 days or 6 days. I'm concerned with the fact that God created the world. Like, what we're supposed to get out of the creation account is not, the facts of how the world was created and why. The thing that we're supposed to get out of the creation account is that God is the creator. And it doesn't matter how he created it or over how long or anything like that. Like, we're not going to die and go to heaven someday and there's going to be a quiz where we're going to be asked how old was the earth. If you get it wrong, you're not getting into heaven. To me, what matters is that we understand God created the earth and that he created each and every single one of us. And Christians will get hung up on arguments of how old the earth is, and they'll split churches over it. And I don't see a reason for that. I just want to worship with my fellow Christians, worship with my fellow brothers and sisters, and I don't want to let little things like that get in the way of dividing us, because I know topics like that are really divisive and really, really big ways that Christians divide themselves. So I've come to the conclusion, if it's a divisive thing in Christian theology and there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer for it, I just, I feel like it's better just not to sometimes. I'm only willing to agree with the Big Bang as it refers to God's let there be light. Yeah, and that's what a lot of the Christian scientists say that I know of who talk about, oh gosh, we can't get stuck on this. I'm sorry. Ain't got nothing to do with how we're supposed to live salvation or eternity. Yeah, absolutely. It's got nothing to do with any of that. Because I believe the world was 7,000 years for the majority, but I've never thought that much about it. So I just thought I'd ask. Yeah, no, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And these are great questions. This is the stuff that I love to talk about. Imagine a quiz on Judgment Day. Yeah, no, I like this quiz. Who was the who were the four wives of Jacob? Get this right, or you going to get into heaven? Petty and relatively unimportant. Yeah, and well, I wouldn't say they're unimportant, right? Like I think it's still important that there are people out there that study this kind of stuff. I just don't think it's important enough to divide over. Like there are definitely issues to divide the church over, like dogmatic issues and sometimes doctrinal things, right? But not over little things like that. Like there's no reason to divide a church and to call people non-Christian because they have a different theory of creation, right? And I just want to be able to worship with my brothers and sisters in Christ. And I think it's still important that there are people out there that study that kind of stuff. But I also think it's important that we don't divide over it, right? But yeah, so here's the thing. I want to show you guys something real quick. I don't want to get off on a whole tangent, but I do want to show you guys something really cool. So I believe it was the French. I don't remember what country. But anyways, there was a country in Europe that was doing the excavations in Egypt that found Ramses II's body. And they were attempting to fly him back with them so that they could study the body. I believe it was the French, but I could be wrong about that. But just for the sake of the story, we'll go with the French. And if I'm wrong about that, someone can either correct me or, it's not super necessary to the story. But let's just say it was the French, right? So the French are over here, they're archaeologists, they're digging in Egypt, and they find Ramses II's body. They find his tomb, and they're digging it up, and they're like, oh my gosh, we just found Ramses II, we found his tomb, we found all the stuff around it. They're trying to fly him back into France. Turns out that the French government will not allow Ramses II's body to be flown into France because he doesn't have a passport. So you want to know what these French archaeologists do? They create Ramses II, a 20th century French passport. And I'm going to show you guys a picture of it right here. This is a picture of Ramses II's French passport. You can read it. Passport number, country code, Egypt. Full name, Ramses II. Sex, male. Nationality, Egyptian. Date of issue. Back in, what is this? 1974 is the date of the issue of the passport. Here's the picture of Ramses II. But yeah, so that's a fun fact for you guys. Ramses II of Egypt from way back in the day has, I believe, a French passport. So those are the type of fun things that you learn in seminary, is little fun things like that. But yeah, so that's archaeologists. Hilarious. But so this is the point though, right? This is how well bodies stay intact when they're embalmed. Right? Ramses II was embalmed, and you can see him right here. This body is 3,200 years old. This is a 3,200-year-old body, and it has been preserved this well. If your body's not embalmed, it's gone within years, right? The Egyptians somehow found a miracle way to keep bodies alive, for very, very, very long periods of time. So whenever it says here, let me go back to our chapter, Joseph commanded the physicians in his service to embalm his father. Joseph is commanding the Egyptian physicians to do to Jacob what they did to all the pharaohs in the land of Egypt, right? They are commanding him to mummify Jacob. So fun fact, Jacob, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the forefathers of Israel, Jacob was mummified. And he was turned into a mummy. And then, after he was turned into a mummy, as we're going to read here in a second, he was returned to the cave of his fathers, and he was buried there. The question you guys might be asking is, have we found Jacob's body? I'm going to say Jacob's body is probably gone. And here's why I'm going to say that. Even though we know that the mummification and embalming process, allowed for these pharaohs to be preserved for thousands of years, these pharaohs were buried underground, sealed in massive stone tombs, airtight, nothing got in, nothing got out. And they were sealed there for these thousands of years. That being said, Ramses II, a big part of why his body was preserved for so long is not just because of the embalming process, but because he was sealed in a rock casket. Since Jacob was put in a cave that probably wasn't even sealed, I'm going to say his body has probably been gone at this point. Even though he was embalmed, I'm going to say his body's probably gone. I could be wrong about that. Obviously, I'm not an archaeologist, I'm not a scientist, but my best guess is Jacob's body has probably not been preserved nearly as well as the others. So even if we found this cave at Mamre that is being talked about, I feel like his body probably still wouldn't be there. But anyways, that's to say, Joseph has his father Jacob turned into a mummy, which is kind of cool, actually. So the physicians mummied Jacob, right? So if you remember, Israel is the new name for Jacob, same person. The physicians of Egypt turn Jacob into a mummy, just like the pharaohs, and they spent 40 days in doing this. So if you guys don't know, the mummification process takes a long time, right? So whenever they say 40 days, they're probably not kidding. It's a long process. Yeah, like it says here, for that is the time required for embalming. And then the Egyptians wept for him 70 days. Right, so essentially the entire nation of Israel, or the entire nation of Egypt, wept for 70 days. And essentially just what that means is it was a time of weeping for said important person, right? So the entire Egyptian people were told, hey, this, Joseph, who saved us from the famine, that Joseph, the really important one who saved us, his father died, and the people wept for him. So when the days of weeping for him were past, Joseph addressed the household of Pharaoh. If now I have found favor with you, please speak to Pharaoh as follows. My father made me swear an oath. He said, I am about to die in the tomb that I hewed out for myself in the land of Canaan. There you shall bury me. Now therefore let me go up so that I may bury my father, and then I will return. Pharaoh answered, go up and bury your father, as he made you swear to do. So Joseph is asking for permission from Pharaoh. If you will remember, Joseph, even though he's very high in the land, he is still second to Pharaoh, right? So he's asking Pharaoh, hey, can I bury my father in the land of Canaan where we're from? And like I said at the beginning of the stream, right, this land of Canaan will one day be the land of Israel, right? It is referred to as the land of Canaan now, because obviously Israel doesn't exist yet. But this land of Canaan is the land where Israel will one day be, right? So he's going to go back. Joseph, as we can see here, Joseph's going to go back to Canaan. So Joseph went up to Canaan to bury his father. With Joseph went all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of Pharaoh's household, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, as well as all the household of Joseph, his brothers, and his father's household. So Joseph and his brothers and his father's people, they are going into Canaan to bury his father, right? So a big funeral service with all of Jacob's household, all of Joseph's brothers, all of the land, all of the elders of Pharaoh, all of that stuff. And it clarifies only their children, their flocks, and their herds were left in the land of Goshen. And remember, like I said, the land of Goshen is the land that is the land that was set aside for Jacob and his family in Egypt. So both chariots and charioteers went up with him. It was a very great company, right? So during this time period, chariots and charioteers were the main form of transport and military usage. This was the time when chariots were the big military thing. When they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, they held there a very great and sorrowful lamentation. So this is probably a funeral service, right? They came to the land and they had a funeral service. And he observed a time of mourning for his father 7 days, right? So a 7-day funeral service. Long time, right? When the Canaanite inhabitants of the land saw the mourning on the threshing floor of Atad, they said, "This is a grievous mourning on the part of the Egyptians." Therefore, the place was called Abel Mizraim, right? So the Canaanite people, the inhabitants of the land of Canaan, right? Not the Israelites, right? Not the Israelites. The people who lived in the land of Canaan right now, they saw the Egyptians come in, and they just see the Egyptians and they say, "Oh, well, this must be a big grieving part on the Egyptians," right? Like they probably didn't know this was Jacob and his family. They just saw the Egyptian party. Thus his sons did for him as he had instructed them, right? So Jacob's sons took him and buried him in the cave that he was supposed to, and they carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave at the field of Machpelah, the field near Mamre, which Abraham bought as a burial site from Ephron the Hittite, right? So it's again clarifying, very, very detailed, this is the cave that he was buried in. After he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt with his brothers and all who had gone up with him to bury his father, right? So they all went back to their land of Goshen in Egypt after all of this had been done. So let me pull up the map one more time. We can probably see roughly where this is. Exodus from Egypt. Let me see. So this is the Exodus from Egypt, so I don't know if this stuff will be here for the Exodus of Egypt map. It would probably be on a different map. Can I pull up a different map? Biblical world. Jacob returns to Canaan. This is probably a better map. This is probably a much better map. If I can get this to go away. There we go. Mamre. Here we go. So this is Mamre. This is where the cave would have been, where they would have been buried. So let me back out. Keep an eye on Mamre. Right, so as we can see, this is kind of the modern day Israelite border. This is the Mediterranean Sea. This is, gosh, I always mix up the different seas. But this is Galilee, right? Sea of Galilee, the Jordan River, and then the Dead Sea, I believe. And as you can see here, this is Egypt, right? So this is the Nile River. This is the outline of Egypt. Let me back up further so maybe you guys can get a better idea, right? So Italy, Greece, Turkey, modern day. Israel right here, land of Egypt. This is the Nile River. So this is where they were at. I don't know if Goshen is on this map. We might be able to see Goshen on the other map. But up here, let me see if I can zoom in just far enough to see Mamre, right? So this is the Nile River. This is Egypt. They're traveling from here up to Canaan. This is the land of Canaan. Mamre being right here. This is where they would have buried Jacob at. And if we pull up the Exodus map right now, this might show the land of Goshen. Maybe. I'm not sure if it will or not. This is the city of Ramses. See, that's one of the things is that we don't know where all these places are. So that's a big thing. Some of the lands that are labeled in the Bible, we know where they're at, and others we don't. So if it's not listed on the map, most likely it's not a place that we know where it is. But yeah, I don't see Goshen. But anyways, Goshen would have been somewhere in here, in this general region of Egypt. And they would have traveled up this line, up to Mamre. But yeah, so that's that. Just to give you guys a better idea of kind of where we're at in this time period. So then we get into a different story. So now Jacob's dead, and Jacob has been buried with his ancestors. Now we get another story with Joseph and his brothers, right? Just whenever we thought that Joseph and his quarrel with his brothers was over, not that Joseph had any quarrel with his brothers, but we get one more story, right? So realizing that their father was dead, Joseph's brothers said, "What if Joseph still bears a grudge against us and pays us back in full for all the wrong that we did to him?" Right? So this is referring back to whenever Joseph's brothers sold him into slavery, right? So way back whenever Joseph was 17 years old, his brothers hated him because Joseph was the favorite son of Jacob. Joseph was Jacob's favorite son. and his brothers hated him because of it. And one day they decide, Joseph's coming out to see them, and they're thinking about killing him. And Reuben, the firstborn brother, stops them and says, "Don't kill him. That's a bad idea. Let's put him in this pit instead." And then these slave drivers come by, and then they sell Joseph to the slave drivers, right? And then that's how Joseph makes his way to Egypt through the Ishmaelite slave traders. They sell him to Potiphar's house, and he becomes a slave there. And then, all the rest of the story happens after that. So that's what they're referring to here. What if Joseph still bears a grudge against us for selling him into slavery back in the day? So the brothers approach Joseph, and they say to him, "Your father gave this instruction before he died. Say to Joseph, I beg you, forgive the crime of your brothers and the wrong they did in harming you. Now therefore, please forgive the crime of the servants of the God of your father." So the brothers lie to Joseph. Just whenever we thought that the brothers were in the clear and that they had,
Cleaned up
grown.
their act.
Yeah, just after we thought the brothers cleaned up their act and, got all their stuff together and they grew and they learned from their bad decisions, they fall back one more time and make one more terrible decision. And it's funny, right? Because this is going along with what we've been talking about throughout the whole book of Genesis. We've been talking about how Abram and his family, they just struggle with lying, right? Like the bad stories that we get with Abraham, he's lying about his wife. And then we get one story with Isaac where he makes a terrible decision and he's lying about his wife. And then we get the story with Jacob, and he deceives his father into giving him the birthright and the blessing, right? Well, first of all, he deceives his brother into receiving the birthright, and then he deceives his father into getting the blessing. So Jacob struggled with lying too. And then Laban, who was who was Jacob's uncle, also lies to Jacob. So this whole family has just been struggling with lying and deceiving each other the whole time, right? They just have this generational sin where they all struggle with it, and we don't know why, but they all do. In the same way that David and his family is going to struggle with women. David struggles with Bathsheba, and Solomon has like 1,000 wives. In the same way, Abraham, his family just struggles with lying. And we see this again here. Joseph's brothers lie to him, and they say, "Hey, actually, our dad said to, make you forgive us for what we did to you," right? Because they think that Joseph's still going to hold a grudge, and they're trying to look out for themselves, and they're making up this lie that their father told Joseph to forgive them. So, that's what they're doing here. They're lying to Joseph. But how does Joseph respond? Joseph, he responds by crying and weeping before them. So Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Then his brothers were also starting. So Joseph starts crying, and then his brothers also start crying. And Joseph falls down before them, the brothers cry and fall down before Joseph, and they say to Joseph, "We are here as your slaves." Right? So the brothers are like, "Oh my gosh, he does hold a grudge against us. This is it. Let's appeal to him one last time. Here, we're going to be your slaves now, and just don't do us any harm. We'll serve you, blah, blah, blah," right? But Joseph says to them instead, "Do not be afraid. Am I in the place of God? Even though you intended to do harm to me, God intended it for good, in order to preserve a numerous people as he is doing today. So have no fear. I myself will provide for you and for your little ones." In this way, he reassured them, speaking kindly to them. So Joseph, this whole time, has just been completely faithful. Right? As we saw, whenever Joseph was sold into slavery, he didn't give up. He still served Potiphar to the best of his ability, and he did all of his work to God. And God blessed him because of that. And then people still wrong him again, and he's sent to prison. And Joseph is in prison now. And he's still doing all the work to the best of his ability, and he's still giving all the credit to God. And he's being completely faithful the whole time. And then these people ask him to interpret his dreams, and he says, "Listen, I can't interpret your dreams, but God can, and if he wants to give you an answer, he will." And then he does the same thing for Pharaoh. He says, I will interpret your dreams, or sorry, I will not be able to interpret your dreams, but God can. So let God give the interpretation to these dreams. And Joseph has just been completely faithful to God the whole time. And he even here at Jacob's death, Joseph is still being completely faithful. And he's saying, listen, I am in the place of God, right? I am here with God. And even though you intended to do me harm, God turned your evil into good. God turned what you intended to harm me for good. He turned your evil into good, right? And I've always found that such a good way about talking about evil in this world. You know, people ask, why does God cause evil in this world? And I don't like to believe that God does cause evil in this world. I like to believe that God takes the evil actions of sinners in this world and he can turn them into something for his glory.
I'm of similar belief. I was a while back. I was praying because I was watching a lot of 411 stuff, and there are some good things that have come out of that sort of stuff. Like, here's a missing person. Here's what people did after the person went missing.
Yeah, absolutely. And like that's what.
Here's the good things. Here's the bad things. Yep.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Joseph is saying here. Like, you intended to do me harm, but because you did do me harm, God was able to find a way to turn that into something good. Right? He saw what you did and he didn't like it. He didn't like that you intended to cause me harm. He didn't like that you sinned and did horrible things. But despite what you did that was evil that God didn't like, he was able to turn it into something good. Because if I wasn't sold into slavery to come here to Egypt, I wouldn't have been able to save the entire land from a famine. Because that's what happens. There were 7 years of great famine that were only known about because Joseph was in Egypt to interpret Pharaoh's dreams. And if Joseph wasn't there, probably the entire nation and all of Canaan would have died because nobody would have prepared for the famine. Like, we're told that the famine was so great that even with the people preparing for the 7 years of famine, that they still didn't have enough food. And then they ended up selling themselves to Joseph as slaves so that they could feed themselves. Because they needed food that desperately, even after having prepared for the famine. So if they didn't prepare, if Joseph wasn't there to prepare them, they all would have died. So God found a way to turn it into something good. So he continues, have no fear. I myself will provide for you and your children. In this way, he reassured them, speaking kindly to them. And then we come up on the last little paragraph or two here of Genesis. So Joseph remained in Egypt, he and his father's household. And Joseph lived 110 years. Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation, the children of Machir, son of Manasseh, were also born on Joseph's knees. So if you'll remember properly, gosh, that was a really weird way of phrasing that. I'm sorry. If you remember from earlier, in a previous stream, Joseph has 2 children with an Egyptian woman, those being Ephraim and Manasseh. And those are actually going to become 2 of the tribes of Israel, right? So if you'll recall, the 12 tribes of Israel, there is no tribe of Israel that is named Joseph. And that seems odd, right? Because the 12 tribes of Israel are named after the 12 sons of Jacob. So if Joseph was one of the 12 sons of Jacob, why is there no tribe of Joseph? Well, because instead of there being a tribe of Joseph, there's going to be a tribe of Ephraim, and there's going to be a tribe of Manasseh, Joseph's 2 sons. And it says here, Joseph got to see his grandchildren from Ephraim and from Manasseh. Then Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will surely come to you and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. So Joseph made the Israelites swear, saying, when God comes to you, you shall carry up my bones from here. And Joseph died, being 110 years old, and he was also mummified and placed in a coffin in Egypt. So Joseph was also mummied, and he was also placed in a coffin.
Hey,
Although,
Logan,
what's up?
I'm gonna head out. Talk to you later.
Okay, yeah, man, absolutely. Thanks for stopping by tonight, man. I appreciate it.
All right, bye.
See ya. So yeah, this is how we end the book of Genesis. After all these weeks, I mean, obviously we have a lot more to talk about, but this is the last part that we're gonna read. So as you can see right here, Exodus starts right here. Chapter 1 is the last little bit. It took us 10 months almost to get through this. Just every single Wednesday night we did this. It was super fun. And obviously we have a lot more to talk about tonight. We're not even close to done, but it's been super fun. We read through all of it. I have my commentaries here. I want to read through those a little bit, talk about what they have to say about Genesis 50, and have a good time. But this is the last verse of Genesis. And Joseph died being 110 years old. He was mummified and he was placed in a coffin in Egypt. And this is such a cool line, right? Joseph is so faithful. Like, he completely believes what God has said. He completely believes that the promise given to his father Jacob is true. Right? This entire book, ever since Genesis 12, whenever Abraham originally called Jacob, or originally called Abraham, right? The promise was given to Abraham in Genesis 12, leave and go to the land that I have called you to go to, the land of Canaan, and I will bless you, and I will give you this land, and I will make you a numerous people there, and I will bless you and make your name great. And obviously we haven't seen the fulfillment of that promise. At this point, Jacob's family is somewhere in 70 of number, right? So there's Jacob and his sons and their wives and their kids. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were all given this promise that in the land of Canaan you will be made into a great nation. And obviously they're not even in Canaan anymore. They're in the land of Egypt. But Joseph here is so confident in God's promise to his father, his grandfather, and his great-grandfather that he fully believes, listen, one day after my death, you will all be brought up out of the land of Egypt and be taken back to the land of Canaan and made into a great nation. And in the day that you are taken up from Egypt and taken back to the land of Canaan, where God promised you would become a great nation, I want you to take my body and bury it there with all the rest of my family. The same place where you buried our father Jacob, in the same place where you buried his father Isaac, and in the same place that you buried his father Abraham. Bury me with all of them. And that's where we're going to go from here, obviously. We've got the Exodus from Egypt. And the Exodus from Egypt is where we're going next in this next book here. This is going to be where the Israelite people, Exodus, right? That's the reason for the name of this book, Exodus, where they do their exodus from the land of Egypt, where they do their exit from the land of Egypt and go back to the land of Canaan. This is going to be where we get that story. This is the story where they become that great nation, where they are given the land. And obviously, if you know your stuff, you'll know that not all of this is fulfilled in the book of Exodus, and we'll have a couple books after that where the rest of it is fulfilled. But this is the start of the fulfillment of that promise. The book of Exodus is where they leave the land of Egypt and go back to the land of Canaan, and then we'll have a longer story where they get to actually possess the land and see all of the promises that God promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But Genesis, where we have finished up right now, this is the story of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is the story of the forefathers of Egypt, of Israel, the forefathers of the Israelite religion, of the Christian religion. The ones that got this whole thing started when God called them to be a part of it. That's who this book, Genesis 12 to 50, has focused on. And now we've come to the end of Jacob's life, and Joseph is dead as well. And then we're going to be moving on here in a second. He was mummified like the Egyptians did, or not the same? So the exact same. Exactly the same. So whenever it says embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt, the same Egyptian physicians that mummied the pharaohs are the same Egyptian physicians that would have mummified Joseph and Jacob. Like the exact same Egyptian physicians. that would have mummified the pharaohs would have been the physicians mummifying Joseph and Jacob. The same exact ones, the exact same process. I never realized Exodus was named relating to Moses leading out of Egypt. Yeah, no, absolutely. So that's the definition for Exodus. I don't know the exact word for word definition, but Exodus is like the exit, a large, like, so typically you'll hear the term used for a large movement out of something, right? So the Exodus out of Egypt, right? That's why it's called that. In the same way that Genesis is named Genesis because Genesis means beginning, right? The beginning of something. And Revelation, like all the books named after, and like Numbers, right? Numbers is named Numbers because it's about numbering a lot of people, stuff like that. But yeah, so I've got my Word on Fire commentary here. I believe there was something out of here that I wanted to read, if I remember right. So if you guys don't know, the Word on Fire Bible is a really fantastic commentary. I am a big fan of it. So this one right here, this is volume 1, which is just Genesis through Deuteronomy. Like, this book is the size of my Bible, and it is just commentary for Genesis through Exodus, or Genesis through Deuteronomy, I mean. So it is a large commentary. But I really like this one. I really think this is a good commentary. Hey, I mean, like, that's why we're here, man. We're here to learn, and we're here to have a good time. And, you guys teach me some stuff, I teach you guys some stuff, and we just have a great time. That's why we're here, man. There's been some things that I've learned that I've been like, yeah, I should have known that my whole life. But so one of the cool things about this Word on Fire commentary is that it draws from the entire Christian corpus, right? So essentially you'll have art pieces from like Michelangelo back in the day and art pieces from all across the globe that picture these events. You'll get sayings from early church fathers like Orion and people like that. And then you also get like some more contemporary quotes as well. So here's a quote from Pope St. John Paul II. And yes, I know Catholic, but I know if you're Protestant, that can set off some alarms, but they have some good things to say too. They're still our brothers and sisters in Christ. So this is a quote from him, Reconciliation and Pardon, referring to our chapter for today. And he quotes, "The reality of disunity, of rancor and hatred, of envy and violence is all too frequent in human experience, even among members of the same family, of the same nation, and between even the nations of the world. Where are true unity and true peace to be found?" The experience of Joseph can enlighten us. When he finally reveals himself to his brothers as the one whom they had sold away into slavery, they feared a just punishment for the harm which they had inflicted upon him. But Joseph said to them, "Do not be afraid. Even though you intended to do harm to me, God intended it for good." Here we discover an extraordinarily profound and striking dimension of human relationships: the possibility of reconciliation and pardon. The excellence of justice, grounded in love and expressed in an encounter of genuine openness and brotherhood. Here we begin to see that true unity and peace are not merely questions of economic and political structures. They are more basically the result of human acts of sincere love and effective solidarity among individuals and peoples. So there you go. You got a fantastic quote regarding this passage. And I think I really find that one super, super inspiring. Because as it says, an all too real reality of our world is really truly the disunity, the hatred, and the violence. I think a lot of us in today's world can relate to those statements. I live here in America, and gosh, I don't know if America has been more divided since the Civil War. Politics is so extreme to the point where half this nation hates the other half, and everybody's constantly bickering and fighting, and the news is just a place of hatred and spreading of hatred, and everything's super depressing all the time, and everybody's out to get the other person. And that's why I don't keep up with the news anymore. That's why I don't watch it. That's why I don't do anything with it anymore, cuz I don't want that on my mind. I don't want that to be where I'm at. And it really is a true reality of our world today. The disunity, the hatred, the envy and violence. And yet we have stories like Joseph. Stories that are extraordinarily profound and uncover a striking dimension of human relationships. The possibility of reconciliation and pardon. The excellence of justice grounded in love and expressed in an encounter of genuine openness and brotherhood. And after all, isn't that what we as Christians are called to do? In the same way that Christ offers us forgiveness, right? In the same way that we are offered forgiveness by God through Christ, all he asks is that we forgive each other. You know, as is said in the Lord's Prayer, forgive us our trespasses as we learn to forgive those who trespass against us. So in the same way that God has come to forgive us of our sins through Christ Jesus, we need to learn to forgive others. In the same way that Joseph forgives his brothers of the worst atrocity they could have committed against him, selling him into slavery and calling him dead. He forgives them, and he holds no grudge against them, and he still wants to see the best for them. And as it says up here, as Joseph quotes to them, "Have no fear, I myself will provide for you and for your children." What an extraordinary example of forgiveness. One that each of us can strive to. One that I hope all of us would be able to reach. And I know that's hard. I know that's very hard to forgive and I know it's very hard to forgive people who have really truly wronged us. But Joseph sets a bar that each of us should strive towards. And just as God has forgiven us, we should seek to forgive others. Off-topic question, but since you brought it up, I've always wondered why Catholics pray to Mother Mary. Before I moved to Florida, I was born and raised in the UK and went to a Roman Catholic school my whole childhood, and they did the whole Rosemary thing and practiced a lot of meditation and just things that don't really relate to the Bible. Do you know where they got some of their teachings and practices? Yeah, so absolutely. I can talk on that for a second. Let me save my spot. I've got another quote from this that I want to read from before we end. Actually, I've got a little bit more that I want to read overall, but I can talk a little bit more on that. So this is actually something I learned about a little bit quite recently. Probably a term that more Protestant believers would be accustomed to is the oh gosh, what's the term? Why am I forgetting it? Not the brotherhood of all the priesthood of all believers, right? That's what it is. So probably a lot of my Protestant brothers and sisters probably know the term the priesthood of all believers, right? So essentially, the priesthood of all believers is the idea that every believer is part of the same family, right? So you and me and every other believer worldwide are all part of this priesthood of all believers. So that's probably a term that most people are familiar with. In the Catholic tradition, they take this very, very seriously to the point of saying even those brothers and sisters of ours that have passed away are still continuing members of this priesthood of all believers, right? So they believe, St. Peter, St. Paul, St. Mary, all of these previous Christians, all of these previous Christian brothers and sisters who have died, they are also continuing members of this priesthood of all believers, right? And so probably most of you will know that in the Catholic tradition, one of the ways that you ask for forgiveness for your sins is that you go to the cathedral or to the church or wherever you practice in Catholicism, and you go into the confession booth, right? So you go into the confession booth and you confess your sins to the priest, who then the priest intercedes for you to God, right? And whereas in Protestant tradition, we say you can go to God yourself and ask for forgiveness of sins, the Catholics say it's better that the priest is the one who intercedes for God, because the Catholics take kind of a Old Testament approach, right? So if you'll recall from the Old Testament days, the people of Israel would go to the Levite priests, and they'd give the Levite priests their sacrificial offering, and the Levite priests would make the sacrifice and ask for forgiveness of the Israelite people's sins on their behalf, right? So the people would bring the offering, and they'd ask for forgiveness, and the priest would make the sacrifice for the people and intercede for them to God. So the Catholics take a similar approach. They say, you have your sins, you go to the confession booth with the priest, and then you ask the priest to intercede on your part before God and ask for forgiveness of those sins. In the same way, they view that you can do that with previous dead saints. So let me try to explain that a little bit more clearly. So whenever the Catholics are praying to Mary, whenever the Catholics are praying to St. Peter, St. Paul, or whatever saint, they aren't worshiping that saint. They aren't treating them as a divine figure. They are doing exactly what you would do when you go to the confession booth with the priest, right? So if you go to the confession booth in Catholic tradition, you aren't treating the priest as the one who forgives your sins. You're not praying to the priest. You are asking the priest to pray for you. In the same way, in Catholic tradition, they believe you can pray to a specific saint so that saint can intercede for you before God, right? So, for instance, let's say I'm Catholic and I am going to make a prayer. I can pray, O Saint Mary, I have done this and this, and I really need forgiveness of doing these things. And I pray that you will intercede for me on my behalf before the Father, because you are in heaven and I am not. And I cannot go to the Father directly other than through prayer. And I pray that you will go to the Father and intercede on my behalf so that my prayer might get to him. And obviously I'm paraphrasing, and not all of that is exactly accurate, word for word, but essentially that should hopefully be a good analogy to get the gist across, if that makes sense. And if you want more clarification, I can try and talk more on it. I also don't know it super in depth, but I know it enough to at least talk it to it at that point, or at that level, I guess. But that is to say, they're not praying to them as if they are divine figures. They're not praying to Mary as if she's a god or anything like that. They're praying to Mary so that she can intercede in the same way that a priest would, if that makes sense. But yeah, hopefully that helps answer the question. A lot of Protestants tend to get it misconstrued by thinking that they are praying to Mary as if she's divine. But that isn't true. They don't believe that Mary is divine in any way. They don't believe that she's a god or anything like that. They are asking for Mary to intercede, is essentially what they're doing. Because they believe that Mary was much more pure than them, that they have a closer contact to God. At least I believe. I could be wrong on that part, but I think that's why. That last part, I mean. But hopefully that helped answer. And if there's any Catholics in chat, I don't want to be speaking wrong. So if there's any Catholics in chat, and if you know anything more about it than I do, feel free to speak up and let me know if there's anything that I'm saying is wrong or if there's anything that you can clarify even further. I'm Protestant myself, but I love all my Catholic brothers and sisters, and you're all welcome here. So if anybody in chat is Catholic as well, you can help clarify further or tell me if I said anything wrong. But yeah, okay, that makes sense. I always thought it was odd that they were praying to her instead of God. Thanks for the clarification. Yeah, no, absolutely, man, absolutely. I love to help out with stuff like that, so don't feel bad about taking us off track. I get us off track all the time by telling us stories about Ramses II's passport photo and stuff like that. So I get us off track too, so don't worry about it. So, I've got another quote here. Actually, which one was it that I wanted to read? I've got two more quotes here. I'm trying to figure out which one it was that I wanted to read. Actually, you know what? I might read both. So this next one kind of relates to what I was just talking about earlier. This one is from, I'm assuming a pastor, Fulton Sheen, from about 150-ish years ago. Little did Caiaphas realize the significance of his words, that it was expedient that one man should die for the nation rather than the whole nation perish. John 11:50. Centuries before, the motive of Joseph's brethren was evil when they threw him into a well and sold him into slavery. But they, nevertheless, fulfilled the purposes of God. For Joseph later on said to his brethren, "Even though you intended to do harm to me, God intended it for good, in order to preserve a numerous people, as he is doing today." Here, too, from the human side, there was murder for political ends. From the divine side, Caiaphas unconsciously affirmed that Christ was an offering for the Jewish people, and for all people, his death would be vicarious. His life would be a sacrifice for others. So in the same way that God was able to use the evil of Joseph's brothers to bring about good in Joseph's life, God was able to take the horrific actions of the Jewish people in putting Christ to death on the cross and use that as a way to save all people from death, which I think is pretty cool. And then I've got one last quote. This is from a church father, St. John Chrysostom, and this is on his homilies on Genesis. The quote is, "By faith he did all this." And his quote is, "The text goes on, and Joseph died, being 110 years old. Why did it indicate to us his age, too? For you to learn how long he had been entrusted with the control of Egypt is why. He was 17 when he went down to Egypt, and it was when he reached the age of 30 that he appeared before Pharaoh and interpreted his dreams. He then held complete control of Egypt for 80 years. Do you see how the rewards were greater than the hardships and the recompense manifold? For 30 years he struggled with temptations, suffering servitude that elicit accusation, and ill treatment in prison. Since he nobly bore everything with thankfulness, accordingly he attained generous rewards even in the present life. Consider, after all, I ask you, that as a result of that short period that he endured servitude and imprisonment, he occupied a royal position for 80 years. For proof that it was by faith that he did all this, and for the same motive gave directions about the transfer of his bones, listen to the words of the letter to the Hebrews. By faith, Joseph, at the end of his life, made mention of the exodus of the Israelites." So in the same way that Joseph struggled for 30 years of his life, Joseph spent 30 years of his life being sold into slavery, tempted by Potiphar's wife, put into prison, and abused. And because he was faithful to God for all of those 30 years, God blessed him for 80 years where he was second in command over all of Egypt. and he inherited an even greater reward in the afterlife. In the same way, God calls us to dedicate our lives to Christ in this life. If we, as Christians, take up our cross and follow Christ and his example in this world, even if we might suffer as a result, we will be rewarded greatly in the end. So that's what I want for each and every single one of us. I pray that in the same way that Joseph was faithful through 30 hard years and received a greater reward in the end, I pray that each and every single one of us as Christians would, as Paul would say, finish off the race strong. Even though we might suffer in this life, pick up our cross and follow Christ and his example in this world, so that in the end we might receive the greater reward. That's what I would hope for each and every single one of us. Pick up our cross, follow Christ, and even though we might suffer in this short term, know that we have a greater reward in the end. In the same way that Joseph suffered for 30 years, but was rewarded much greater in the end for being faithful to God. Pray that each and every single one of us can do that too. Let me get caught up here. Sorry. Another thing they did is that when we did communion, you could only get the bread and wine if you were blessed by the priest. If you hadn't, then you just get blessed. Yeah, so that's another thing. And this isn't just Catholic tradition. This actually comes from a couple different Protestant traditions as well. So real short, there's a couple different ways that communion is served. So you can have a, So essentially you can have a closed table in the sense that the table is only open to those who have been baptized and have been blessed. Then you have a closed open table in the sense that, you have to, we are going to, it's kind of hard to explain, but yeah, essentially there's different ways that communion is served in different traditions. And kind of all these different ways that it is served are, they're a result of Paul talking on abuses of the Lord's Supper. And Paul says that you must come to the table with a right heart. And different Christian traditions have interpreted that to mean different things. And essentially some of them make the table very closed off as a result, and some of them make it very open to anyone. And it depends on the tradition. But yeah. Do you know any books that encourage conviction in the heart, or better yet, any verses? I think I struggle with conviction sometimes, and I wish I was stronger in some aspects in my life than others. Oh, yeah, there we go. Altus, thank you, man. I appreciate that. I didn't even have to give an answer. So, yeah, Altus, absolutely, man. And, so I can pull that up and we can talk about it for a little bit. Hebrews 10:26, just for the sake of it. For if we willfully persist in sin after having received the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins. Is this the one you were talking about? Hebrews 10:26? So, actually, Zev, you have a really good spiel on conviction. Would you want to give your conviction, or your spiel on conviction, Zev? I know you have a really good take on it. Essentially, sorry, we're getting off on way too many tangents. My mind is all over the place. Sorry, let me get caught up on chat here real quick before I keep going. Altus, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Zev, good to see you, man. He ain't sorry. Don't listen to Gun. Gosh, I didn't realize that's how you thought of me. I mean, I know we're arch enemies and stuff, but... Also, all intentional sin is a demonstration you don't have faith. Before a man sins, he looks around, he locks doors, closes windows, ensuring that no one is watching. But God is always watching, and yet he doesn't seem to care. Because man believes other men exist, but man doesn't believe God exists. If man did, then man would never sin intentionally. I have a spiel on conviction. Yeah, Zev, okay. Well, I'll give Zev's spiel shortly, which I agree with. So there's a difference between, conviction of sin and, gosh, I don't really know the exact language to use, but like convictions of the heart, right? So let me give you some examples, right? Like there's the Holy Spirit convicts us in many ways, right? So once you are saved and you become a believer, you have the Holy Spirit, which is the third member of the Trinity, and he works on your heart constantly. And he convicts you of sin in your life. And so essentially the Holy Spirit will convict you of actual sins, which are like, stealing, murder, things that you know are sin, right? Things that the Bible explicitly labels are sin. Lying, stealing, murdering, stuff like that, right? The Bible's very clear that they're sin. The Holy Spirit convicts you of them, speaks that you shouldn't do them. Then there's different types of conviction, right? So I'll give you an example. I have a friend of mine who feels convicted that... Actually, I'll give a different example. So I have been sober of any kind of alcohol for, gosh, like 2 years now. I mean, I'm not going to say I was like a drinker. Like I didn't get drunk. I didn't drink all the time. I had like a drink here or there every once in a while. Usually whenever I was out with friends at a bar or at a restaurant or something like that. And obviously I don't think it was a problem. I wasn't getting drunk. I wasn't, and that's what the Bible talks about is don't get drunk. And obviously the Bible doesn't speak against alcohol because the Psalms talk about how you can be merry with your wine and Jesus turns water into wine and there's stuff like that. It is specifically getting drunk that the Bible speaks badly about. But that being said, a couple years ago now, God kind of convicted my heart and he said, I don't want you to drink alcohol anymore. And I said, yo, Yeet fan, thanks for the follow, man. Should I call you Yeet? Should I call you Fan? Gosh, what should I call you, man? You have a name that you want to go by? Yeah, man, thanks for the follow, man. I appreciate that a ton. Thanks for that. Gosh, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so I kind of felt God convict me, and He said, I don't want you to drink alcohol anymore. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? Like, I don't really drink all that much. Like, I don't get drunk ever, any of that kind of stuff. So why don't you want me to drink? And He kind of told me, because you have friends that struggle with drinking, and I want you to set a better example. And I said, okay. And since then, I felt convicted that I shouldn't drink. And I haven't for 2 years now. I haven't had any alcohol of any kind, not once. And the reason for that is because God has convicted my heart and said, you won't do it. Not because it's a sin, because it's not, but because I don't want you to for whatever reason. And in that way, there's different kinds of conviction. The Holy Spirit will convict you of actual sins. And I believe that the Holy Spirit will convict others of things that might not necessarily be sins, but that you shouldn't be doing for whatever reason. So like I have a friend of mine, this is the example I was going to give earlier. I have a friend of mine who won't swim on the Sabbath. And I wouldn't say it's a problem to swim on the Sabbath. You go to the pool, you go to wherever to go swimming for a little bit. But he has this conviction on his heart that for some reason God's told him, don't swim on the Sabbath. It's a problem. And don't do it. And so he doesn't swim on the Sabbath. And he feels convicted about it. He doesn't do it. And I don't have a problem with that. So, yeah, man. Romans 12, number 14, read Romans. Okay, let me pull it up. Gosh, we're going all over the place today. I love it. 14, 13. So here we go. Let us therefore no longer pass judgment on one another, but resolve instead never to put a stumbling block or hindrance in the way of another. I know, and am persuaded in the Lord Jesus, that nothing is unclean in itself, but it is unclean for anyone who thinks it is unclean. If your brother or sister is being injured by what you eat, you are no longer walking in love. Do not let what you eat cause the ruin of one for whom Christ died. So do not let your good be spoken of as evil. For the kingdom of God is not food and drink, but righteousness and peace and joy in the Holy Spirit. The one who thus serves Christ is acceptable to God and his human approval. Let us then pursue what makes for peace and for mutual upbuilding. Do not, for the sake of food, destroy the work of God. Everything is indeed clean, but it is wrong for you to make others fall. Gosh, I lost my spot. Fall by what you eat. It is good not to eat meat or drink wine or do anything that makes your brother or sister stumble. The faith that you have as your own conviction before God. Blessed are those who have no reason to condemn themselves because of what they approve, but those who have doubts are condemned if they eat, because they do not act from faith. For whatever does not proceed from faith is sin. Right? So this is essentially what God convicted my heart of, right? Like, it says, it is clean to do it. It's not a problem if you do that thing, but hey, it's unclean for your brother and your sister, so don't cause them to stumble by eating it in front of them. In the same way, God convicted my heart, and he said, listen, it's a problem with your brothers and sisters back home, so don't drink because it's causing them to stumble, even though it's not a problem. And that's kind of what he convicted my heart of. Oh, it's Leo. Oh, dude, Leo, how's it going, man? Dude, Leo, it's good to see you, man. Good to see you stop by. I didn't realize it was you. So this is your old Twitch account, huh? Dude, it's good to see you back, man. I'm glad you're here. Fence laws, they are good. Oh, Altus, can you explain the fence laws a bit more? Now I'm curious. It is essentially like what this section is talking about. Is this considered fence laws, or are you referring to something else? I'm curious now. Also, Zev, did you actually unfollow last night? I have the feeling that you did, and I realized that late last night after I went and got the tacos. I was like, I think Zev actually unfollowed me. But now I'm curious. Anyways, so when you started explaining, I realized what you were talking about. Yeah, dude, I was gonna say, Zev, I was hoping that you would mention that because oh, you didn't? Okay. Actually, wait, do I have that follow? I might have that command disabled. No, I have follow age active. I don't know why it's not working. Wait, we had a problem last night where the Claudebot wasn't working. Let me try a different command. No, that command's is working. It's just the follow age one that's not working. That's odd. I don't know why it wouldn't be. Yeah, target name has been loyal to us for target follow age, everyone. Yeah, it should be working. I don't know why it's not working. I just checked. That's odd. Anyways. Yeah, Zev, I know you have a very good spiel about that. So I was kind of hoping that you would talk about it and bring it up, because you can probably talk about it better than I can. So, but hopefully I did a good enough job. If you think it's a sin and you do it, then it's a sin, whether it's biblical or not. If someone is convicted on it and forces you to follow their conviction, then it's sin. But it's a struggle for someone and you do it around them, then it's, yeah. Good, just finished schoolwork? Yeah, dude, okay, nice. What schoolwork were you working on tonight, Leo? That's awesome, man. Gosh, I feel that. A fence law is a law to protect the laws. Like no alcohol in a church is a fence law to protect the church members who should. Oh, yeah. Okay. I know what you're talking about. I've never referred to them as fence laws before, but I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, so for example, if you guys know what I'm talking about, like in the 80s here in America, there was a rule where if you were a church member, you didn't dance or go to the movies. And that was a statement around the church, not because they thought dancing was a sin or because they thought going to the movies was a sin. It was because they didn't approve of the type of music and movies that were in secular culture. And they said, hey, we're not going to cause each other to stumble by taking in this media that's really harmful, so we're going to not do it. So kind of a similar thing, like a fence law. Basically, it says guard the commands, which is understood to mean create a fence around them, guard them. If it says do not trip a blind man, then a fence law is not to, or trip someone who is blind on the path. Yeah. And, like, I'm going to be honest, I don't remember if I talked about this on stream recently or if I talked to this with people at the seminary, but I was talking about this recently. And I was talking about how I think we need to bring stuff like that back. Because here in America, we've kind of gotten to a point where we try to get as close to sin as we can without going over, right? Like one of the most common questions I get asked, because everybody knows that I'm in seminary, everybody knows that I'm going to probably be a pastor one day, and people always ask me these type of questions, right? And they ask me, do you think swearing is a sin? Do you think drinking is a sin? Do you think smoking is a sin? Do you think blah blah blah? And they'll ask me like, how far do you think you can go with your woman or your man before it's a sin? What's the line that you can't cross before it's a sin? And I always give them the same answer. I'm like, listen, is it bringing you closer to God or is it not? Right? And the example is a bounded set and a centered set. So think about it in two analogies, right? You've got a bounded set, which is like a box, right? And you've got this box. And outside of this box is things that are okay, and inside this box is sin. And their mindset is, as long as I'm not doing the stuff in this box, I'm fine. But I can get as close to it as I want, and it's not a problem, right? They're like, I can get as close as I want to the box, and it doesn't matter. As long as I don't get into the box, I'm fine. That's not how we're supposed to be thinking. That's not how we're supposed to be thinking at all. Instead, we need to be thinking of it as a centered set. So think about it like the Earth, right? You've got the Earth and you've got the Earth's orbit. Is this action going to bring you closer to the orbit, or is it going to be sending you further away? You have to think of every action that way. You have to be thinking, is this action that I'm going to be taking, is it going to be bringing me closer to the center of good, of God, or is it going to be taking me further away from God? We shouldn't be asking, how close can we get to the line before it's a sin? We should be asking, is this action going to be bringing me closer to God, or is it not going to be bringing me closer to God? And we had a saying here in Sunday school here in America. We had a saying, what would Jesus do? WWJD. And we say that to kids, we say that to kids. I think we should be saying that to adults. I unironically think that asking yourself, what would Jesus do, is the best way to determine whether something is wrong or not. Because Adam and Eve ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and because of that, humanity deep down has the knowledge of what is good and evil, whether we realize it or not. And because of that, I think each and every single one of us as humans can picture in our mind, would Jesus do that? And if we think Jesus would do something or would not do something, then that's the answer. I genuinely believe that. If we would just think to ourselves, would Jesus do something? And we say no, then we shouldn't do it. I genuinely think that that's a very good way of doing it. Oh shoot. Cool Beans, thank you so much. You gave me a lot to think about. Have a blessed night. I gotta go. Dude, awesome. Cool Beans, thank you so much for stopping by tonight, man. I hope you're still here to hear this. I hope you didn't already head out. But yeah, man, thank you so much for stopping by tonight. I'm glad that you were blessed tonight. I'm glad that you were able to learn a lot. I'm so glad that you were here. I love you, man, and I hope you have a great night, man. God bless. When people say, I can do it because the law doesn't directly say it, are following the letter of the law only. Yeah, absolutely. The issue is laws like that don't accomplish what we want them to. They accomplish people getting good at secrecy, looking at prohibition. It causes the opposite of its goal. Well, in some people it can. The question in my mind is not, does it work in every instance? The question in my mind, does it help more people than it hurts? Right? Like if we put a fence law up and it helps more people to not sin than it would if it wasn't there, I would say it's good. Right? But if it's doing the opposite effect and it's causing people to become more secretive, and, disgrace the law, then yeah, I'd say it's a problem. It's only effective if you discipline, if you disciple, sorry. It's only effective if you disciple people. If you preach on Sunday and leave them to their own Monday, Saturday, then they have no purpose. A fence that is only put up on Sunday won't protect anything on Monday. Absolutely, right? And that's why we need to be teaching people, how to actually live life. Like, we shouldn't just be, teaching people, broad things. Like, it's great to go to church on Sunday and be taught, like for our passage here in Genesis, pull back up Genesis 50. So we're talking about forgiveness, right? And the theme of forgiveness and how you need to forgive people. It's a great thing to go to church on Sunday and get a message of, hey, forgive your neighbor. But it's another thing to like actually do it, right? It's another thing to actually put that into practice. And like we need to be giving people good ways to actually put into practice what it is that they're hearing on Sunday, right? And we just break it down to a basic level, and we don't actually disciple people to go any further than a basic faith, right? JPWHGHITSITFP. Zev, I'm going to need you to explain what that means. Well, Jesus would follow the entire... that's a good point. Interesting. I guess that comes down to how you interpret Peter's dream. And Paul, like... I guess that would really come down to how you'd interpret Paul and Peter and all of that stuff, I guess. 99% of churches are a TED Talk on kindergarten. Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, we just kind of put things at, like, a very, very basic level. I have yet to see one teach exactly what the law is on how to walk on a daily beyond don't bite people, don't be mean. Yeah. I mean, I've seen it. I have seen churches that do it well. I don't think a lot of churches do, but I have definitely seen churches that do it well. Jesus probably wouldn't have gotten himself into this situation in the first place. Wait, which situation? Jesus' revolutionary teachings were not be nice and love people, but that's every teach. Well, yeah, I mean, Jesus wasn't your stereotypical nice guy. Jesus was very confrontational. He actively shamed people publicly. He flipped tables in the temple. He wasn't your stereotypical nice guy. He was loving, but he wasn't nice, if that makes sense. And Jesus, I don't think necessarily would today. He followed it, but he followed it because he hadn't yet fulfilled the law yet. Interesting. I'm liking this conversation. This is a fun conversation. Although we do got to come back here to Genesis 50 at some point here. Actually, we'll try to have both at the same time. I'm going to come back to Genesis real quick while we're having this conversation. I'll bounce back and forth. So, yeah. Book of Genesis. What do we think? We spent 10 months of this year going through the book of Genesis every single week on Wednesday nights, 1 to 2 chapters at a time. And we finally hit the end of it after almost a whole year. What do we think? I want to take this time to just kind of reflect on this book. And I'm going to ask you guys to do a lot more of that this week. Actually, 1 second, actually. I want to check something before I keep talking. Sorry, 1 second. Sorry, my mind's like all over the place. Yeah, so let's take some time to just reflect on this book. I know a lot of you guys have been here for quite a bit of this Bible study. I know some of you guys have been here for a couple of the sessions. Maybe some of you guys have only been here for one, or maybe just this one. Regardless, I want to take some time to reflect on our Genesis Bible study. If you were here for some of our previous Bible studies, what were some of your favorite moments? What were some of the chapters of the book of Genesis that stood out to you the most? What were some of the stories that had the biggest impact on you? What's some of the things that you learned over the course of this book? What are some of the things that you've taken from this study and applied to your life? I kind of just want to have a broad discussion about the book of Genesis, right? We start off the book of Genesis with an account of the creation and fall, right? So we have a massive creation story where God creates the entire universe in a matter of 6 days. And I know you can take that literally or metaphorically. Either way, God creates the whole universe. He creates humans, and he creates humans in his image. And he creates everything perfect. Everything is amazing. But he gives humans free will. And humans choose to rebel against God and choose to sin, which causes the entrance of death and sin into our world, which is a ramification that we still experience today. You know, we see Cain and Abel, the firstborn sons of the world, Cain killing his brother Abel. The firstborn children of the world kill each other. We see that the people become so wicked that God floods the entire earth to get rid of their wickedness. But God saves Noah and his family because they are faithful and love God. We see the Tower of Babel, where people refuse to obey God's commands to be fruitful and multiply and inhabit the earth. And they decide instead that they want to build to heaven and build straight up. To which God confuses the languages and causes all the languages that we see today to exist. Then we get into the story of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. A long portion of this narrative, Genesis chapter 12 to chapter 50. A story about God's promise to his people. His promise to Abraham, his promise to Isaac, and his promise to Jacob, all being the same thing. You know, I will make your name great. I will make you into an amazing nation. I will give you this land, and I will bless you, and I will prosper you. And I will bless the entire world through you. And we see the story of the troubles and the blunders that this family makes along the way, but how they are still faithful to God in the end. That they still devote their whole lives to him. That God counts their faithfulness as righteousness to them. After all, I'd say that was probably my favorite chapter in this whole book. I actually preached a sermon on this, about 2 years ago now. I preached a sermon on Genesis chapter 15. And if you'll remember right from back in the day, Genesis chapter 15 is where God meets Abraham for the second time. And at this point, Abraham has followed God's call in his life to move away from his family and his friends and his hometown and go to this strange land, and under the assumption that God would bless him and give him a son. And after all these years, God has been quiet, and he hasn't given Abraham a son. So God meets Abraham a second time in this chapter, and he says the same thing. You know, I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you will be an amazing people. And Abraham asks God, he says, how will I know this? How do I know this to be true? God says, count the stars of the heavens. Can you count them all? Can you count every star in the universe? If you can count the stars of the universe, that will be your descendants. That will be the number of your descendants, every star in the universe. And in that moment, Abraham believes the words of God. And it is noted that God reckoned that faithfulness, that belief, as righteousness. And I love that message. It wasn't about any of the things that Abraham did. Abraham left his whole family and was faithful to God for all of these years and did exactly what he wanted. It wasn't any of the things that Abraham did that counted him as righteous. It was him believing on the words of God that counted him as righteous in God's eyes. And that's what we're promised as Christians today. Believe in the name of Christ. Not just a mental belief, not just a factual belief, because even the demons know that Christ died and rose again. But actually believe in your heart that he died for you. That's my favorite. Out of this whole study that we've done, Genesis chapter 15 has always stood out to me. I love that one. I don't know if you guys have any favorites that you guys want to recount, if you guys have anything that you guys have learned or talked about. Um, Gosh, I've learned a lot of really cool things over this. Altus, I remember you talking to me about the macaroni paintings with Rachel and Leah. I always thought that was a really good analogy, something I had never thought of before. That was a big thing that I learned. Gosh, I really learned in a new way how sin can manifest itself through generations. I never realized that before, this idea that Abraham and his family struggle with sin and lying. Sorry, the sin of lying. I never saw that before. But in this Bible study, I've seen in a new way how sin can follow through generations if not treated properly, and how it can really mess up families. It can really screw up families and tear households apart, and it can really seep its way through generations. And that's something that I really want to take with me and realize, at some point someone's got to break the chain of sin in a family, and recognize where families have struggled and where to fix it. These last sections with Joseph, we've really talked about forgiveness. We've really had this heavy emphasis almost every week on forgiveness of sin and how we need to forgive each other. That's been a really good touching point that we've gone over. Yeah, I don't know. Do you guys have anything you guys want to talk about? Nate, do all of these stories still read as real accounts to you, or just a collection of stories with good messages? So I believe all of these to be true stories. I believe, every day that time goes on, we are continuing to prove these stories true. There was a short time in American Western, or not American, sorry, just Western culture in general. I'll give one example. There was a time in Western culture where Western historians and theologians believed that the Old Testament stories were all myth. The House of David never existed. All of these monarchical narratives are fake. It's all just a good story, right? Even theologians would say this. They'd say it's just mythological stories, but they still have a good heart and they still reveal God to us. Well, very recently, we have discovered not only proof of Israel being in Egypt and being a part of Pharaoh's reign, we have also discovered direct evidence of David's existence. So two things I'll talk about. The Merneptah stele it's carved in stone. It's a document written by one of the pharaohs, I believe Ramses II. And essentially, in it, it is talking about how the pharaoh has amazingly conquered all these people. And he's like, I have conquered this people group, and I have destroyed this people, and these people bow to me and are my slaves, and these people are no more. And then in that list, we see Israel. And I think the exact quote is, Israel has no more seed, in the sense of like, they are wiped out. They cannot have any, like, there won't be any more of them, right? And it's interesting because Israel, in that document, is listed as a group of people, not as a nation. And that is very pertinent to the biblical narrative. It doesn't seem like it's very pertinent, but it is. Because all these other people that are listed in this document, they are nations. They are established peoples. They have militaries. They have land. And they are worthy opponents of Pharaoh. And then you have Israel, which is listed as just a group of people. Why would Pharaoh, who is recounting his major conquests, put Israel in there if they're just a little group of people? Unless they were a formidable opponent. So first of all, it shows that Israel, even though a small group of people, was a formidable opponent against Pharaoh in Egypt, which goes very clearly along with the biblical narrative. But it also shows that Israel wasn't truly a nation until much later. They really were just a bunch of nomadic people, which also really follows the biblical narrative. So we've got the Merneptah Stele, which is an amazing account of Israel's legitimacy during that time period and very much lines up with the biblical narrative. And then we have another one, and it is called the Tel Dan inscription. And it was actually discovered by one of my professor's archaeology groups. So I have a professor on this campus. You can look him up. His name is Dr. Stone. So if you look up Asbury Seminary, Dr. Stone, you'll find him. He's a archaeologist who has done a lot of digs in, the Middle East. So he was part of the help of digging up Jericho. He helped dig up a lot of these big cities. And I don't think he was there during this dig in particular, but it was part of his group. And they were digging up a portion of the tribe of Dan. So this is called the Tel at Dan. So Tel, T-E-L, is a word that they use for dig site. So the Tel at Dan, the Tel Dan inscription. It's an inscription that they found at the dig site at Dan. And I don't know exactly what it says, but essentially it has this long phrase, and it's put on this sign, at the city, right? And essentially it says something, 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 a people of the house of David. That dates back to that exact time period. So for the first time, we have real historical evidence that David truly was a king over Israel. Other than the Bible, because obviously we have the Bible, but we just keep proving the stories of the Bible to be true every day. And I know there is some debate over the first 11 chapters of Genesis. You'll find some people who say the first 11 chapters of Genesis are mythological stories, they're a little bit exaggerated, stuff like that. And I wouldn't call you unchristian if you believe that, because there is evidence to support that. But I personally believe they're all true stories. I do believe that there was a flood. I have the hot take that I believe it was a local flood. I don't believe it was a worldwide flood, but I know that's a hot take, so I won't get into that. But I do believe that there was a flood. I think there's too much evidence in that region of the world that there was a flood that wiped out all the people. We have flood accounts from other people groups. So, it is not just the biblical narrative that it recounts a global flood or a massive flood. The Epic of Gilgamesh is a writing from that time period that also recounts a massive flood that wiped out the entire area. There's other flood accounts as well that we have access to that also recount the same thing. So how do you explain all of these different flood accounts that date back to the same time period, unless if there actually was something that happened in that region of the world that was a massive flood that wiped out a ton of people? And the creation account, I think you could argue that there's Christians that argue the world was created over millions of years. There's some that say it was created in 6 days. There's some that say the world is billions of years old. There's some that say it's 10,000 years old. None of that matters to me. Like I was saying earlier, all I care about is that you believe God created everything. So I do believe that God created everything. I do believe that there was a Garden of Eden and that man sinned. I do believe that Adam and Eve sinned in the garden. I do believe that there was a flood. I do believe that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were people who existed. And I think there's two, not only do I believe it in my heart because I believe the Bible is true, I believe it because there's so much historical evidence to suggest that it is true. And, there's so many people who argue that there's not enough evidence for some of these stories, but what about all these other cultures back then? We believe the histories that are written in Egypt and don't question them to be true or not. We get all these other histories and books from the land of Canaan, and we don't question them and their legitimacy. So why is it that the Bible seems to be the only document that dates back this far in the land of that area of the world that we question its legitimacy? And it's not like it actively denies the other histories that we have uncovered. Like, there's nothing that we found in archaeology and in historical records that have denied what these texts say. There's nothing that we have found that counteract what we've read in these narratives. So it's not like it's the Bible's narrative versus the narrative we found in history and archaeology. It's just that we have the Bible that records this portion, and we have the other histories of this region of the world that also exist, and they don't counteract each other. And we believe the Egyptian histories, we believe the Canaanite histories, we believe the other documents we found, but why do we believe that why do we question the Bible's legitimacy but not the legitimacy of the Pharaoh's scribes? You know, that's how I would question it. Yo, oh gosh, how do I say your name? Should I just call you Joe? Can I call you Joe, or should I call you Jamerican? What should I call you, man? Thanks for stopping by. Appreciate you. The only one I say it's the only one. Sure thing, brother. Joe? Okay, yeah, I'll call you Joe, man. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you. How's it going today? Good to see you stop by. Good to see you. But yeah, man, the world, I think it really is kind of a spiritual attack. I think that, you know, evil forces want the world to deny the legitimacy of the Bible without really truly having a basis for it. Yo, Joe, thanks for the follow, man. I appreciate it. That means a lot, man. I'm glad you're enjoying this enough for the follow. I guess I'll catch you up real quick. So we're going through Bible study every single Wednesday night. We do Bible study, and we're actually just finishing up the book of Genesis tonight. Genesis 50 we just finished up right here. As you can see, we're going into Exodus next week, so I'm actually pretty excited for that. But yeah, that's where we're at. We actually just finished up our chapter. We're just kind of talking now, ending things up here, wrapping things up. Nice. I just started Genesis last night. Dude, that's awesome, man. I'm glad. So you like this is a Bible study on your own, or a Bible study with a group, or how you reading through it? That's awesome, man. Yeah, we just finished it up. We're going through Exodus now. It's super fun. I'm enjoying it. But yeah, I mean, I'll just end that conversation by saying, you know, I think we continue to prove the legitimacy of the Bible every day, and we don't question other ancient documents that we come across. Why question the legitimacy of the Bible, especially if it doesn't actively contradict anything else we've found in archaeology and in history? You know, if it was actively counteracting anything else we found, maybe you could question it, but it doesn't. So in my mind, I see no reason to question it or to do anything like that. So, but yeah, man, Nate, I hope that helped. I'm pretty passionate about it. I guess as you can tell. But hopefully that kind of answered your question, Nate. Hopefully. And hopefully I've been able to answer all you guys' questions tonight. Hopefully. And like I said, this is a discussion, so, you know, you guys are allowed to talk up too, and, you know, this isn't a sermon where I'm preaching down to you guys. This is a Bible study where we all talk and have conversation together, so. Yeah, just my personal devotional time. I've been wanting to go back through the Old Testament slowly and see Christ in it all, see the gospel woven in. Yeah, man, absolutely. Absolutely, man. And you can really see it. You can really truly see how God has just worked through, you know, all of our history and all of this document to just really, you know, how he worked through all of these events to lead up to Christ, you know, and it's really cool. I think it's really cool. I think it's really cool, to say in the least. And that's why we're here, man. We're here to learn and have a great time. But yeah, so this is that. Gosh, we got some more stuff to do. We got quite a few announcements, and we got our prayer requests from our community, and then we're gonna go raid another channel. So if you guys don't know, if you're new here, so we have a structure that we do every single Wednesday. So after we're done doing the Bible study portion, we have some announcements that we do. So we have a weekly challenge that we do every week on this channel, and it always relates to our passage that we've read for the week. We also have prayer requests that we do for our channel. We also have a charity that we're trying to raise money for. If you can see above my head, I'll explain a little bit more about that. And then we pray out, and after we pray out, we go raid another channel. So we go on Twitch and we look for another Christian channel. So we type into the bar Christian, we search the Christian tag, and we just go raid another channel. We go bless someone else's night. So if you want to stick around for that, I'd love to have you there. We love to just put a smile on someone's face at the end of the night, really bless someone's night in the same way that you guys have blessed mine. But yeah, so real quick, I'll go over the announcements. So first of all, we have the charity. You can see above my head. So there's a charity that me and my friends do. So I can put in the chat real quick. We have a thing for it. So this isn't like a formal charity by any means. This is something that me and my friends do back home. It's part of our Bible study back home. And we did this last year at Christmas, and we're planning on doing it again this Christmas. So essentially, we ask all of our churches for a bunch of goods, and we buy a bunch of goods ourselves, and we pack them all in a big old box trailer. We take them downtown in the nearby city, and we just kind of pass them out to the people who need it. All of the less fortunate, all of the homeless, and all of that kind of stuff. So we collect like food and clothes, blankets, pillows. We even collect like toys, books, Bibles, you name it, right? Anything that people could need, especially going into the Christmas season. We try to do it the weekend right before Christmas. So we're trying to do it again this year. We're trying to raise as much money for it as we possibly can, get as many goods as we can, pass them out whenever people need it the most. And one of the ways that we're trying to raise money for it is through this channel. So any penny that we make off of this channel through any means, whether it's through direct donations like you can see above, or whether it's through subscriptions to the channel, or whether it's through the money that we get through ads or bits or sound bites on the channel, or we even have a merch store if you want to buy a shirt, anything. Any way that you guys give money to the channel, 100% of the proceeds are going directly towards this charity and helping us buy goods for these people that really desperately need some stuff during that time of the year. So if you want to donate in any way and get something in return, we'd love to take the money and put it towards a good cause. But yeah, so that's our charity that we're trying to raise money for. We've also got the weekly challenge. So we just ended the book of Genesis, and a big part of the so this chapter, essentially, we talked about how Joseph was faithful up until the end. Despite all of the stuff that was going on in Joseph's life, he continued to be faithful to God up until the very end. And we can see that here in Genesis chapter 50. And let me see if the weekly challenge command works. I think I have the new one typed in. Yeah, there we go. So it worked. So our weekly challenge this week is to place your faith in God's provision for all your needs. So in the same way that Joseph was faithful all this time, that God would provide for him no matter what was going on in his life, even though he was sold into slavery, even though he was put into prison, even though all of these horrible things were happening to him, he was completely faithful to God through and through. And he just completely relied on God, that God would provide for him regardless. So our weekly challenge this week is that we want to place our faith in God's provision for all of our needs. In this way, I don't know exactly what that means in your life or my life or anyone's life. This could be subjective. This could be subjective to each person. This could be that you don't know how you are going to afford to live this week, and you need to just truly put faith that God will get you through this week. And you need to pray to God and ask him and know that he will. Or maybe this means that you don't think you have enough money to give to the church this month. Bible says we should give a 10% tithe of our money back to God. And maybe you don't think that you can give 10% back to God because you don't know if you're able to give that much. And I would say, place faith in God and give that 10% back to God, to the church, to charity, wherever it is that God calls you to give it, and trust that He will provide for you, and He will give you what you need because you've been faithful in giving your 10% back to Him. Maybe that means that there's somebody who really needs help right now, and you don't know if you can give money to them or give what that you need to them, or maybe something else. I'm not sure. I think, I really prayed about this, and I feel like this is the challenge that God wants us to do this week. And I feel like there's probably someone in particular that this is going to help. I don't know who it is, and I don't know what the situation is, but I really truly believe that somebody needs to hear the message to place faith in God, that He will provide for all your needs. I know that this is a challenge that might not apply to everyone. Usually these challenges are something that we can all do as a community, myself included. And maybe this will come up in my life. I'm not sure. But I really feel like this is something that somebody in this chat needs to hear. And I don't know who it is, and I don't know what the context is, but I feel like someone in this chat needs to hear the message to place your faith in God for all of your needs. And maybe it's Nate, because he's going to be camping and has no electricity. So maybe that's who needs to hear the message to put faith in God. But yeah, so that's our charity goal. That is our weekly challenge. And we also have the prayer requests for our channel as well. So let me go through all of those real quick. So if you guys don't know, we have a Discord. So let me put that in the chat right here real quick. If you want to join our Discord community, it's kind of a place where we are growing together. So we not only have a good time on this channel and play games and have Bible study, but we're also growing together. We share things in this chat to be able to push people and to help them discover their best selves. So we have the weekly challenge. We encourage each other. We have a prayer request channel where we can be praying for each other. And we also just have a good time and have fellowship and community together. So one of the things that we do, we have this prayer request section. And I want to go through this prayer request section to pray for all of the needs from our community. So I'm going to be going back just a little bit. Some of these prayer requests have been answered, so I don't have to go over all of them, obviously, because of that. So the first prayer request on our channel is our dear friend, Evan. He's a good friend of mine back from middle school and high school. He helps me with this channel quite a bit, and he's been suffering with a medical condition recently that I won't get into super deeply, but he's been doing better recently with it, but he's still struggling quite a bit. So we really want to pray for him that can get better. We also have some prayer for Cole, who was just here earlier in our Discord chat. If you heard him earlier, we want to be praying for his family and all the stuff that's going on in his life, specifically prayer for his mother and his sister. We also have a prayer for Lavender Snorlax, a member of our community that I went to college with. She is going to get her teaching license. And she right now is struggling because she doesn't have a car or a driver's license, and she needs those to be able to drive to the place where she's going to be doing student teaching at. So we're really praying for her that she might be able to afford a car and to be able to get her driver's license, that she might be able to pursue God's call on her life in order to, get this student teaching license. Also a prayer for the Special Medic. If you guys don't know, the Special Medic is an amazing Twitch streamer. We've rated him a couple times. He is also doing a Bible study of the book of Genesis, which is really kind of cool. He plays games, talks about the Bible, super genuine guy. I would give him all the support in the world if you guys haven't been with him before. But he has two prayer requests. So first of all, he's trying to raise money for a missions trip right now, so that he can go on it and help people. If you have first of all, if you want to be able to donate to him, you can go to his channel and help donate to that cause. If not, we want to be praying for him that he might be able to get all the money he needs to go on that missions trip. And we also have a prayer for a friend of hers who is also dealing with a medical condition. We really want to be praying for her so that she might be able to get through that. Also a prayer from Zev. Zev, I don't know if you're still here. I don't know if you'd be able to give an update on this situation, but Zev was asking for prayer for someone he knows whose father will probably be passing away from a terminal illness. We really want to be praying for them. Also, a prayer request from Todd Gray. He's asking for prayer for a couple guys in his gamer group. They are Tartsa and Simon. I'm not sure how to say it. Both of them had relatives that were in attendance at the Oklahoma State Fair, where there was an active shooter. So we really want to be praying for their families and everything going on there. We also have some prayers from Thomas. So Thomas is asking for prayer for his mom who has a bad breathing problem. So we really want to be praying for her. And also for his grandma who is in her later years and has some medical conditions as well. So please be with Thomas and his family. Keep them in your prayers. And then we also have a prayer request that was just put in our chat as well. If you guys don't know what's going on in Israel, I'm going to be honest, I don't really know too much about it either, but I know that there's some really bad things that are going on in Israel right now. So we really want to be praying for them and for all the people that are being affected by all this violence. Finally, we have one other prayer request from another community of ours that is not in the Discord, but she's going through quite a bit right now. She essentially she had a call in her life to pursue chaplaincy, and she's been pursuing that for some time. She very recently got a new call in her life to pursue a residency program. And not only is she pursuing this residency program, but it is halfway across the country. So it's about a 24-hour drive away. It is very far from her family and friends and everything that she knows. And it's been really hard on her being so far away from everyone. And so we really just want to pray for her. We really want to pray for her that she has the strength and the courage to be able to continue to pursue God's call in her life, and that she can receive all the comfort and love that she needs while she is over there pursuing God's call in her life. So that's all of our prayer requests for our channel. As always, if you guys have any prayer requests that you want us to know about, you can put them in the Twitch chat here, or as well in our Discord in our prayer request section. And then in that way, we will all know how we can be praying for you. And I believe in the power of prayer, so we can all be praying for you and really help you out. Skylander, man, it's good to see you. You're coming in here right at the end, man. It's good to see you. Thank you for stopping by tonight. I'm glad you did. We were just about to pray out, actually. So if you want to stick by for a little bit longer, we're going to go raid another channel and bless someone's night. But hey, let me pray real quick for all of us. Father in heaven, I thank you so much for tonight. I thank you so much for gathering all of us here so that we might be able to learn a little bit more about you and to dive into your word. I thank you so much for meeting us here in this conversation and for teaching us a little bit more. And I pray that every single person who came here tonight might know something new and that they might be able to apply something new to their lives moving forward. I pray that each and every single one of us has been brought closer together and been brought closer to you as a result of this conversation. And I pray that as we go into our work and school week ahead, that we might put you first and do well in our work. I thank you so much for this Bible study as we went through Genesis. It's been a long time, 10 months of going through the book of Genesis. I believe this is the 37th week of this Bible study. I thank you so much for bringing us through this Bible study, for bringing us through the book of Genesis, and I pray that you will bring us many more to come. Thank you so much for meeting us here in this conversation, and go with us as we go back out. And please be with each and every single one of the prayer requests that we just mentioned from our community. I pray that you will be with each and every single one of them, meeting them in each of the ways that they need attending to. And for all the ones that weren't stated as well, be with them too. I pray all of these things in your name. Amen. Skylander, I'll give you a new idea. Okay, man. Yeah, what's the new idea? I gotta hear it. I gotta hear this new idea. I'm gonna pull up on, let me get swapped over here. It's gonna be a black screen here for a second. I'm gonna pull up Twitch and screen capture. Here we go. So like I said, we always end these streams. We go on Twitch, we search up the Christian tag, and we're going to sort low to high. And we're just going to look through these channels. Hang on, let me make it a little bit bigger for us. Here we go. So yeah, like I said, we always end these streams by rating another channel. And what we do whenever we get into the channel, we spam in their chat, God loves you, and we just bless their night in the same way that you guys have blessed me. So just get in their chat, spam God loves you, show them an amazing time. So let's do this. And honestly, I'm liking a couple of these already. So if you guys see one in particular that you guys want to raid, or if you guys have anyone in mind, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to click that. If you have one in mind that you want us to raid, or anyone in particular that you notice, let us know. But yeah, we're going to keep scrolling until we find somebody that we think we want to raid. Texas Union Discord, it might be, but hey, it's something that we could all allow. Okay, is this something for tonight, or what do you think? We could look into, yeah, man, dude, that could be something fun we could do at some point. Definitely not something for tonight. I don't know if we have enough time for that tonight, but yeah, we could maybe do that sometime soon. That could be fun. So, who are we thinking tonight? Usually I try to look for somebody who has something in their title, you know, like Bible study, God loves you, something like that. So a lot of these people are people we've rated before, you know, rank for Hagen for Jesus, Jesus loves you. Yeah, a lot of these people are super genuine. And these are all people, like I said, that we've rated before. So if you want to check out any of them, yeah, this guy's doing a devotional. Super amazing people. Oh, here we go. Yeah, I was going to say, this is the guy we've rated before. He's super cool. Cockroach, devotion. He does devotionals while playing stuff like Fortnite. He's really cool. Gosh, what is this one? God is cool. I don't know if we've rated this guy before. This guy says, God is cool. Let's read through him. He's 6'8" and ugly, apparently. The tallest pro Fortnite player. From Mixer, where I had 6K followers, already loving Twitch. Any support is greatly appreciated. Also, if you're reading this, we're married now. P.S. Placed top 100 in multiple Fortnite tournaments. Look at this guy. My name is Jay. I'm 6'7" in real life. Oh gosh, is it 6'7" or 6'8"? Can windmill and dunk on you. Love gaming, competing, and having lots of fun. I originally come from Mixer, where I grinded for 6K followers, only to lose all that when it folded. Anyway, come hang out. Yeah, dude, that's awesome. Well, hey, this guy thinks God is cool. We want to go raid this guy? Think this guy might be the guy we got to raid. So, like I said, what we do is we go into their chat, and what we do is we just spam in there, God loves you. So, oh, follower only chat? Okay. I didn't notice that. Nate, thank you for saving me. Oh, well. I didn't notice that. Thank you for pointing that out, Nate. Gosh darn. Oh, here we go. Be excellent to each other? I didn't notice this one. Yeah, look at this guy. Be excellent to each other. Hello, my name is Mathodosius. We must be the change we wish to see in the world. Always be excellent to each other and party on, dudes. Please take the GLF. I don't know what that is. Treat others the way you want to be treated. John 3:16. Here we go. Yeah, this guy's awesome. I like this guy already. So we're going to go raid this guy. Thank you for noticing that, Nate. I appreciate that. I did not notice that at all. So here we go. We're going to go raid this guy. And if you guys are new to the channel, I want to let you guys know how you can come back. So we are always active in the Discord community. If you want to join the Discord and you want to talk to us there, it's a place where we can kind of gather together, have a good time, chat, be there for each other, let each other know what we want to be praying for and all that good stuff. So if you want to join the Discord, we're active there. But if you also want to come back for the stream, we play games on Tuesday nights and we do Bible study on Wednesday nights, both at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you ever want to come back, those are both options for you guys. I'd love to see you back. I'd love to play games with you guys. I'd love to have more Bible study with you guys. I love all of you guys very much. I thank you so much for stopping by tonight. We finally finished up the book of Genesis after almost 10 months. 37 weeks. We finished up the book of Genesis. We're finally at the end. And now we get to move on to the book of Exodus. So I hope that you guys will join me for that. Thank you guys so much for stopping by tonight. I love all you guys very much. We're going to go raid this guy. I'm going to start the raid. And yeah, thank you guys for stopping by. I appreciate all of you very much. I hope that I'll see all of you again. And everyone here, go in peace to love and serve the Lord. I'll see you guys again. And there we go.